Chapter 263. The Grand Wedding, Old Madam Sue, it's about time. Let's start dressing up the bride. Looking at the time, the eldest princess reminded Old Madam Sue softly. Soon after, Zhang Peihuan, assisted by Yu Er and Lu Er, changed into her wedding dress. This wedding dress was sent over by Xiao Nani. Traditionally, the bride was supposed to embroider her own wedding dress. However, Xiao Nani had simply sent over a ready-made one. Box novel. This wedding dress is really well embroidered. When Zhang Peihuan stepped out from behind the screen, everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. All present had seen luxurious items before, but upon seeing the wedding dress on Zhang Peihuan, they couldn't help but praise it. Zhang Peihuan had seen the wedding dress before, but wearing it during the day, seeing herself in the red dress in the mirror, she felt an unusual sensation. She couldn't help thinking of that man. Newlyweds typically wore red. It was hard for Zhang Peihuan to imagine what Xiao Nani would look like in red. King Cheng's mansion. Master, are you ready? When Han Feng opened the door to Xiao Nani's room, he saw the man sitting there in a bright red wedding dress. Seeing this, Han Feng was startled. What time is it now? When are we going to pick up the bride? Hearing Xiao Nani's words, Han Feng couldn't help but twitch his lips. Looking at Xiao Nani's untouched bed, Han Feng said, Master, you didn't sleep all night, did you? Seeing Xiao Nani nod, Han Feng was speechless. Imperial uncle. Half a tea's time later, several princes had arrived at the King Cheng's mansion, all except for Xiao Juanhao. After all, it was also his wedding day. Even though Xiao Juanhao was under reflection due to the emperor's orders, he could still go out on his wedding day. But his wounds hadn't healed, making him look pale. Against the bright red wedding robe, his complexion seemed even worse. Have the guests not arrived? Seeing the empty courtyard, Xiao Juanhao looked displeased. The steward, hearing this, looked troubled. After a long pause, he said, several princes went to King Cheng's mansion. So, the Prince Cheng's mansion had no guests. There were only so many families in the capital. As both Prince Cheng's and King Cheng's mansions were holding weddings on the same day, those who went to King Cheng's mansion naturally couldn't come to Prince Cheng's. Hearing this, Xiao Juanhao looked even more displeased. Similarly displeased was Lin Mengyao. In the end, Lin Mengyao didn't get married from the Lin mansion. As Lin Xingqian was now the head of the Lin family, Lin Mengyao had to marry from a small house in the capital, which Xiao Juanhao had given her. Why are there only these items? Looking at the few boxes in the courtyard, Lin Mengyao felt embarrassed. She had married into the Prince Cheng mansion as a secondary consort. If she didn't present a worthy dowry, she would surely be looked down upon by the people of the mansion. These dowries were even inferior to what a common official might provide for his daughter. Miss, all our possessions were in the previous mansion. These items were acquired after the mistress sold her own jewelry. A maid, seeing Lin Mingyao's expression, whispered. Hearing this, Lin Mengyao bit her lip. She wore a rose-red wedding dress. Yes, rose-red. Because she was a secondary consort, she couldn't wear bright red, so she chose rose-red. Everyone moved. Just as Lin Mengyao was feeling upset, there was a commotion at the door. She turned and saw Xueru entering. Seeing her, Lin Mengyao frowned but approached her. Why are you here? I naturally came to congratulate the secondary consort. When Xueru said secondary consort, she emphasized the word, revealing a hint of disdain. Before Lin Mengyao could say anything, Xueru entered the house. Seeing her back, Lin Mingyao's eyes darkened. Secondary consort, it's better if your maids stay outside. After all, if I say something one shouldn't, it won't be me who looks bad. Recalling the past events, Lin Mengyao turned to her maids and said, You wait here. Yes, Mississippi. The maid stayed by the door, and Xueru and Lin Mengyao walked in together. Lin Mengyao, do you know the trouble you've caused me? As soon as they entered the room, Xueru glared coldly at Lin Mengyao. However, Lin Mengyao, hearing these words, showed no sign of guilt. She merely replied, Isn't it your own fault? If you had succeeded, by now you would be hailed as a great hero of Prince Cheng's mansion, and the prince would not have been reprimanded. Upon hearing Lin Mingyao's words, Xueru's eyes filled with rage. Yet, Remembering her purpose for visiting, she calmed herself and approached Lin Mingyao, saying softly, "One came here not to dig up the past, but to discuss something important with you. What is it?" Noticing the serious expression on Shui Ru's face, Lin Mingyao instinctively asked. Shui Ru gestured Lin Mingyao closer, but as she approached, Lin Mingyao suddenly felt a sharp pain in her neck. Soon after, Lin Mingyao collapsed onto the ground. Looking at the person lying on the ground, a sinister expression appeared in Shui Ru's eyes. With a strong kick to Lin Mingyao, Shui Ru began to undress her, quickly changing into Lin Mingyao's clothes. Shui Ru then shoved Lin Mingyao under the bed. Meanwhile, Jiang Peihuan had no clue about what was happening on Lin Mingyao's side. As dusk approached, the sound of festive firecrackers could be heard outside. Then, the voice of Luer reached Jiang Peihuan's ears. "Eldest Miss, His Highness is here. It's just getting dark. Why is he here so early?" The younger generations of the Jiang and Shui families were seated in Jiang Peihuan's room. Hearing Luer's words, Jiang Changbai responded with irritation. No one answered his question. The eldest princess and old Madame Su were also in the room. Upon hearing the noise, they hurriedly spoke. "Quick, cover the bride's head." Jiang Peihuan's hair was combed by old Madame Su herself. Taking the red bridal veil from the maid's hands, old Madame Su carefully placed it on Jiang Peihuan. Just as the veil was put in place, the sound of laughter came from the door. "King Cheng, if you want to take my elder sister away, you'll have to get past me." The one speaking was Jiang Songbai. Standing at the forefront, he unveiled a couplet in his hands and, looking at Xiao Nani, said with a smile, "Your Highness, if you cannot complete this couplet today, I won't let you set foot in Plum Garden." Chapter 264. Picking up the bride. Xiao Nani didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the couplet in Jiang Songbei's hand. After a moment of silence, he picked up the brush he had prepared and wrote the second verse on another piece of paper. "Is this considered as me passing your test?" he said, putting down the brush and looking at Jiang Songbai. Looking down at the couplet on the white paper, Jiang Songbai showed a hint of surprise in his eyes. He had always known that King Cheng was brave on the battlefield, but he had no idea that his literary talent was also so exceptional. Box novel. Calm upon hearing Xiao Nanya's words, Jiang Songbai bowed slightly and stepped aside, saying, "Please, Your Highness." A smile appeared in Xiao Nanya's eyes. He slowly moved forward, but when he reached the second door, he heard Jiang Sijin's voice, "Stop." Jiang Sijin stood at the entrance of the second door, holding a long whip, with Jiang Ruyun by her side. Looking at Xiao Nani approaching the door, Jiang Sijin spoke up, "Your Highness, if you wish to pass through this door, you must pass my challenge." "And what would be considered as passing your challenge?" "Simple." As she finished speaking, Jiang Sijin pointed to a tree behind her. On its branch was a red ribbon. "Do you see that red ribbon? You send someone to shoot it with an arrow, and I will block it. If anyone can shoot down that ribbon, then you pass. Bring the bow and arrow." Upon hearing Jiang Sijin's words, Xiao Nani immediately turned to someone by his side, but before he could finish speaking, Jiang Rian whispered, "Your Highness cannot do this yourself?" Meeting Xiao Nanya's puzzled look, Jiang Riyun whispered, "The entire Qi Kingdom knows of King Cheng's exceptional archery skills. If you compete against Jiang Sijin, wouldn't that be an unfair match? Therefore, I would like to ask Your Highness to choose one person from the people behind you. Oh, and no soldiers." After thinking a bit, Jiang Ruyun added the last sentence. Hearing this, Xiao Nani frowned. Though Jiang Sijin was young, she had practiced martial arts since childhood. The archery skills of an ordinary person were no match for hers. At that moment, Prince Xiao Junmo approached Xiao Nani and whispered, "Imperial Uncle, let me do it. Are you confident?" "Don't worry, Uncle. One won't let you down." Xiao Nani didn't say anything, but looked at the people around him. Soon, a bow and arrow were handed to Prince Xiao Junmo and Jiang Sijin were of similar age. They both stepped forward. As Xiao Junmo drew his arrow, Jiang Sijin did the same. When Xiao Junmo released his arrow, Jiang Sijin's arrow flew out almost simultaneously. As the arrow was about to hit the red ribbon, it was shot down by an arrow from Jiang Sijin. Seeing this, a hint of disappointment appeared in Prince Anna's eyes. Although Xiao Junmo was young, influenced by Xiao Nani, he had loved horse archery since childhood. Now, even a young girl could easily shoot down his arrow, which made his expression turn grave. It's down. On Xiao Junmo's third attempt, Jiang Saijan's arrow was a second slow, so the red ribbon on the tree branch was directly shot down. As the red ribbon fell, Xiao Nani quickly grabbed it. Handing it to Jiang Sijin, Xiao Nani smiled and said, "Now, can I pass through the second door?" Looking at the red ribbon in Xiao Nanya's hand, Jiang Sijin seemed a bit disappointed, but still stepped aside as agreed. Xiao Nani, with a few princes, headed towards the plum garden. When he reached the entrance of the plum garden, he saw Jiang Changbai standing there. Seeing him, Xiao Nani stopped. "Big brother, do you have any challenges for me?" Though the two hadn't had their wedding ceremony yet, Xiao Nani had already changed his address for Jiang Changbei. Hearing his new address, a flicker passed through Jiang Shangbai's eyes. Looking at the man before him and thinking that he would soon take his sister away, Jiang Shangbai's eyes were filled with mixed emotions. After a moment of silence, Jiang Changbai said, "I only need you to answer one question. Please speak. Big brother, will you treat Huan Er well for the rest of your life?" "I swear on my life that if I ever mistreat Huan Er, may I die with no place to be buried." Xiao Nanya's voice was not loud, but his expression was firm. Hearing his words, Jiang Shangbai's eyes softened. Stepping aside, Jiang Changbai whispered, "Go in. Huan Er is waiting for you." "Thank you, big brother." After bowing to Jiang Changbai, Xiao Nani entered the plum garden. Xiao Nani had been to Jiang Paihuan's room many times, but he had never been as excited as he was now. Upon entering the room, he immediately saw the person sitting on the bed. Jiang Paihuan's head was covered with a red veil, and Xiao Nani couldn't see her face, but he could see her hands clasped on her knees. Stepping forward, Xiao Nani spoke softly, "Huan Er, I'm here to pick you up. Will you come with me?" Under the veil, Jiang Peihuan didn't speak, but she gave a soft affirmative response. Hearing her voice, Xiao Nanya's eyes were filled with smiles. "Let me help." Yu Er wanted to come forward to assist Jiang Peihuan, but Xiao Nani had already reached out his hand first. When Jiang Peihuan held Xiao Nanya's palm, she found that the man's hand was somewhat sweaty. Before she could react, she felt herself being lifted off the ground. "Huan Er, they'll carry you out." There was an immediate outburst of cheers around them, but all Jiang Peihuan heard was the man's heartbeat. Resting in Xiao Nanya's arms, Jiang Peihuan could clearly hear his heart beating faster than usual. Holding Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nani walked step by step, his pace very steady. Being held by him, Jiang Peihuan didn't feel any jolting at all. "Huan Er." After walking for a while, a familiar voice reached Jiang Peihuan's ears. It was Shui Yan, along with the voices of old Madame Jiang and old Madame Shui. Then, Jiang Peihuan felt Xiao Nani come to a stop. "Mother." It was Xiao Nanya's voice. Instead of addressing Shui Yan as mother-in-law, Xiao Nani, like Jiang Peihuan, simply called her mother. Hearing Xiao Nanya's title for her, Shui Yan's eyes showed a hint of a smile, but that smile was mixed with unexplained tears. The members of the Jiang family looked at Jiang Peihuan in Xiao Nanya's arms, their eyes filled with reluctance. None knew what to say. In the end, it was Jiang Hong who looked at Xiao Nani and softly said, "Your Highness, please take good care of my daughter in the future." "Father, rest assured. Elders, please be assured as well. In this life, I will definitely cherish and take good care of Huan Er. It's getting late. Let them go." Chapter 265. Encounter on the road. After old Madame Jiang spoke, no one dared to delay any longer. Xiao Nani carefully placed Jiang Peihuan into the sedan chair. "I've put a lot of snacks inside. If you get bored, you can have some," Xiao Nani whispered into Jiang Peihuan's ear as he settled her in. There were 16 sedan chairs, and they were very spacious. "Let's go." As Xiao Nanya's command echoed, Jiang Peihuan felt the sedan chair start to move. She carefully lifted the red veil covering her head. She saw an array of cakes and snacks inside the sedan chair, and even some tea. Seeing all this, a smile graced Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Xiao Nani rode at the forefront on his horse, occasionally glancing back at the sedan chair. Behind Zhang Paihuan's sedan chair was a seemingly endless procession, all her dowry. Zhang Hong and Shui Yan had prepared a dowry of 120 loads for Zhang Peihuan. Previously, the gifts Xiao Nani sent were all added to the dowry, making the procession seemingly endless, filled with red. Sitting in the sedan chair, Zhang Paihuan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. In her previous life, she had been forced into taking her own life by Xiao Juanhao. Upon reincarnation, she sought revenge and the protection of the Jiang family. She hadn't expected to meet Xiao Nani in this life. Thinking of him, her expression softened. Suddenly, the sedan chair came to a halt, pulling her out of her reverie. Zhang Peihuan leaned towards the window, calling out, "You heir?" Accompanying her marriage were Yu heir, Lu heir, and Yi Xiao. "Eldest miss, am here," Yu heir replied hastily. "Why have we stopped? Today is also the day Prince Qing is getting married. He just picked up his bride from the post station, and our processions have met." Guessing from the time, Zhang Peihuan presumed they were near the city's protective river. Due to the river, the road was narrow, unable to accommodate two processions at once. However, Zhang Peihuan believed that Xiao Nani could handle it. Up ahead, because of the wedding, Xiao Nani's eyes had a hint of gentleness that he didn't have in the past. However, when he saw Xiao Juanhao blocking his way, the gentleness in Xiao Nani's eyes instantly disappeared. Xiao Juanhao didn't look pleased either. Because all the princes had gone to the King Cheng's mansion, so Xiao Juanhao was alone for his wedding. Compared to Xiao Nani's procession, his looked thin. Compared to Xiao Nani's team, his team was very thin. Looking at the dowry behind Zhang Paihuan's sedan chair, Xiao Junhao's face darkened even more. Although King Chujiang's mansion was very wealthy, but after King Chujiang died, most of the treasures were sent to the court. Hence, Zhang Yan's dowry seemed average. It didn't seem significant until compared with Zhang Paihuan's, where the difference was glaring. Prince Qing, as the junior, "You should step back a few steps." Seeing that neither party had any intention of speaking up, the eldest princess, who was the matchmaker, stepped forward. After some thought, she turned to Xiao Juanhao and said, "On any other day, Xiao Juanhao would never have refused the eldest princess. But today, upon hearing her words, Xiao Juanhao directly responded, 'Imperial aunt, on a normal day, I would yield. They say the newlyweds are the most important. Today is not just imperial uncle wedding, but also mine. So today, one do not wish to step back. If you want move, you'll have to." As Xiao Junhao's words fell, Xiao Nani immediately responded. Before Xiao Juanhao could react, he felt a pain in his shoulder, and the next moment, he was thrown off his horse. Xiao Junhao's reaction was swift. When Xiao Nani kicked him off the horse, he quickly stabilized himself. But even so, he could see the mockery in everyone's eyes. Xiao Juanhao looked at Xiao Nani with an intense gloom in his eyes. When their eyes met, Xiao Nani did not flinch. After a long time, Xiao Juanhao turned to the people behind him and said, "Retreat." The people from Prince Qing's mansion stepped aside, and Xiao Nani led his group forward. The sedan chair continued its journey. Even though she couldn't see the expression on Xiao Junhao's face, Zhang Peihuan could imagine how displeased he must have looked. At that moment, Zhang Peihuan felt immensely pleased because none of these events happened in her past life. With the previous emperor and Xiao Nani's biological mother both gone, after entering King Cheng's mansion, the two only worshipped heaven and earth. Then, Zhang Peihuan was taken to the room. "Huan heir, I'll step out for a moment and come back soon." Seeing Zhang Peihuan sitting on the bed, Xiao Nani really didn't want to leave to deal with the others outside. But with everyone waiting outside, Xiao Nani had no choice. Hearing Xiao Nani's voice, Zhang Peihuan nodded. "All right. Imperial uncle, shouldn't you remove the veil for Imperial aunt first?" Just as Zhang Peihuan was speaking, the room's door was suddenly pushed open. The ones who entered were naturally Prince An and the others. Normally, they would never dare to tease Xiao Nani. But tonight, perhaps Xiao Nani was in a good mood, so everyone continuously joked around. Under their tease, Xiao Nani gently lifted the veil from Zhang Peihuan's head. When the veil was lifted, Zhang Peihuan felt a brightness in front of her. The first thing she saw was Xiao Nani in red. This was the first time Zhang Peihuan saw Xiao Nani in red. She was used to seeing men in black. In her eyes, Xiao Nani looked best in black. But now, seeing Xiao Nani in red, Zhang Peihuan changed her mind. The red made Xiao Nani look more enchanting, adding a hint of allure to his presence. At this moment, Xiao Nani's eyes were filled with amazement. He always knew that Zhang Peihuan was beautiful. Usually, she didn't wear makeup, but today, she was fully dressed up. Seeing her like this, Xiao Nani felt a sense of unreality. He reached out and suddenly grasped Zhang Peihuan's hand. Only after feeling the warmth of her palm did he feel a sense of reality. No wonder Imperial is so smitten with the Imperial Ant. She is indeed so beautiful. Not only Xiao Nani was amazed, but the other princes were also stunned upon seeing Zhang Peihuan. Upon hearing this, Xiao Nani couldn't help but frown. He instinctively shielded Zhang Peihuan and then looked at the princes, saying, "Weren't you going out for drinks? Leave now." Chapter 266. Arriving at the King Cheng mansion with that, Xiao Nani pushed everyone out of the door. In this state, he didn't want others to see Zhang Peihuan. "You all take care of the princess."
Yes.
Xiao Nani glanced at the people in the room and said softly. When speaking to the maids, his tone was very cold, and everyone quickly responded. Afterwards, Xiao Nani looked at Zhang Peihuan, his tone becoming gentle again. "They'll be back soon?" "All right." Hearing the man's voice, Zhang Peihuan nodded. Then, Xiao Nani left the bridal chamber. After Xiao Nani left, Zhang Peihuan couldn't help but look around the house. Previously, with her veil on, she hadn't noticed. But now, she was shocked because the room she was in was identical to the plum garden in the general's mansion where she used to stay. If she wasn't aware that she was currently in King Cheng's mansion, she would have thought she was still in the plum garden. "Eldest miss, you don't know. I was startled when one first came in. This yard is identical to the plum garden. I almost thought we were back in the general's mansion. We can't call you eldest miss anymore. We should change that." Just as Lu Er finished speaking, Yu Er softly chimed in. "Knock, knock." At this moment, there was a knock at the door. Hearing the sound, Zhang Peihuan glanced at Yu Er, who went straight to the door. The person knocking was a guard from the mansion. He held various foods in his hands. After handing them over to Yu Er, he whispered, "By the king's orders, food for the queen." Yu Er quickly took the items. After bringing the food back to the room, Lu Er looked at Zhang Peihuan and said, "Queen, there seem to be no other women in this mansion. Apart from them, they only saw attendants and soldiers wherever they went." Zhang Peihuan had already noticed this. When she first visited King Cheng's mansion to deliver some snacks to Xiao Nani, she found that there wasn't a single maid or elderly female servant in the entire mansion. Knock, knock. The door was knocked on again. This time, a voice outside the door said, "Queen, I am the steward of the mansion, here to pay my respects." Although it was odd for the steward to pay his respects on the first day of marriage, considering Zhang Peihuan was new to the mansion, she let Yu Er open the door. "Greetings, Queen." The steward, who looked to be in his 60s, entered and bowed to Zhang Peihuan. Zhang Peihuan raised her hand slightly. "Please, get up." Once the steward stood up, she looked at him and asked softly, "Do you have something to discuss at this time? Or does the king have any instructions for me?" In front of outsiders, Zhang Peihuan wouldn't call Xiao Nani by his name. Hearing her words, the steward quickly said, "The queen misunderstands. I came tonight simply to wish you well and to bring the ceremonial wine." Only then did Zhang Peihuan notice someone behind the steward holding a wine cup and jug. "Uncle Zhong, why are you here?" Before Zhang Peihuan could speak, Xiao Nani walked into the room. Seeing Xiao Nani, Uncle Zhong quickly bowed. "Your Highness, 1 a.m. here to deliver the ceremonial wine for you and the princess." As he spoke, Uncle Zhong lowered his head. Hearing this, Xiao Nani replied softly, "Such a minor matter could have been handled by others." From Xiao Nani's tone, Zhang Peihuan could tell that he treated Uncle Zhong differently. Seeing this, Zhang Peihuan told Yu Er, "Take the wine to the room." Yu Er stepped forward, saying softly, "Give it to me." As Yu Er took the wine and went into the room, Xiaonani said to the steward, Uncle Zhong, you may rest now?
Yes.
As Uncle Zhong left the room, he couldn't help but glance in the direction Yu had gone. When no one was looking, his eyes were filled with turmoil and complexity. In the imperial palace, although Emperor Qi Ming did not leave the palace, because today was Xiao Nanye's wedding day, he generously rewarded the palace staff. So the entire imperial palace was filled with joy, except for the Xinang palace. Under the cover of night, the entire Xinang palace was quiet. The great Empress Dowager sat in her chair, continuously rolling the Buddhist beads in her hand. At this moment, hurried footsteps echoed, causing the great Empress Dowager to pause her actions. Then, the old nanny walked into the hall. Approaching the great Empress Dowager, she bowed and said, Your Majesty, Uncle Zhong has made his move. Hearing this, the great Empress Dowager opened her eyes, a glint of sharpness appearing within. Ever since the last assassination attempt failed, she had been patient. She waited until today, Xiao Nanye's wedding day, believing that after today, there would be no King Cheng anymore. That bastard is finally going to be eliminated. One hope everything goes smoothly. Rest assured, Your Majesty. The poison comes from the western regions, colorless and tasteless. Your wishes will surely be fulfilled. The great Empress Dowager did not speak, but continued to rub the beads in her hands. In Prince Cheng's mansion, after the steward left, Xiao Nanyi did not immediately take Jiang Peihuan back to their room. Instead, he looked at her and asked, Would you like to see how the courtyard is arranged? Jiang Peihuan had already heard Lu Er about the similarities between this courtyard and the plum garden. What she saw now was indeed the same as the hall and plum garden. But upon hearing his words, she still nodded. Seeing her nod, Xiao Nanyi held Jiang Peihuan's hand. The two then walked into the courtyard. Upon reaching, Xiao Nanyi said to Jiang Peihuan, I built this based on your plum garden. However, this tree has just been planted. I'm afraid it will take a few years to grow as big as the tree in your plum garden. Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Jiang Peihuan looked up at the small tree in front of her. In her plum garden, there was a large pear tree in the yard. The little tree in front of her was also a pear tree, just smaller. It's fine. Let's wait for it to grow. Huan Er, tell me if there's anything different or something you dislike, and I'll have it changed tomorrow. There's no need. It's perfect as it is, Jiang Peihuan softly replied. Upon hearing her response, a smile appeared in Xiao Nanye's eyes. Although it was a sunny day, it was still winter, making it quite cold outside. Feeling the dropping temperature, Xiao Nanyi said, Let's go back to our room.
Yes.
Xiao Nanyi, holding Jiang Peihuan's hand, entered their room. Both Yu Er and Lu Er had already left. Therefore, only Xiao Nanyi and Jiang Peihuan were left in the room. The room was well heated by charcoal. Whether it was due to the high temperature or something else, Jiang Peihuan suddenly felt a warmth spreading within her. Chapter 267. Xiao Nanyi was poisoned. She sat down by the bed, but felt slightly uncomfortable. Turning around, she saw the bed behind her was covered with various nuts. What's going on? Upon seeing Jiang Peihuan frowning, Xiao Nanyi hurriedly approached and followed her gaze to see the things on the bed. By the time he returned, he held 2 wine glasses. Sitting next to Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanyi whispered, Huan Er, we still need to drink this ceremonial wine. After drinking it, let's rest early. Jiang Peihuan had a feeling that when Xiao Nanyi mentioned resting, his tone was a bit heavier. Jiang Peihuan didn't respond, but took a wine glass from Xiao Nanye's hand. Their arms touched, and both drained the wine in one gulp. Looking at the empty wine glasses, Xiao Nanye's expression turned passionate. Taking the wine glass from Jiang Peihuan's hand, the man hugged her tightly. Huan Er, you are finally my queen. When embraced by Xiao Nanyi, Jiang Peihuan could clearly hear his heartbeat, just as when he had held her when they left the plum garden. The crown on Jiang Peihuan's head had been removed. Now, her long hair flowed freely, cascading down her back, and this appearance of Jiang Peihuan deeply mesmerized Xiao Nanyi. Xiao Nanyi leaned down, unable to resist kissing Jiang Peihuan. Soon after, both fell onto the bed behind them. Xiao Nanyi rolled over, gently laying on top of Jiang Pei Huan. Looking down at her, he whispered, "Huan air." At this moment, suddenly, Xiao Nani felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt a surge of blood in his chest, and then he spat out a mouthful of blood. The bright red blood splashed onto the crimson bed sheets, making it almost indistinguishable. Xiao Nani. Jiang Paihuan's expression changed instantly. Sitting up, she quickly held Xiao Nani. The wine. The man tried to say something, but after uttering this single word, he passed out. Jiang Peihuan hurriedly felt for Xiao Nani's pulse, only to find that she couldn't determine his condition. Gently laying Xiao Nani down on the bed, she took a deep breath. He had turned pale, and his lips started to turn blue, signs of poisoning. Thinking of what Xiao Nani had said, Jiang Peihuan went to the table and picked up the wine glass. Filled with confusion, Jiang Peihuan pondered. Both had drunk the same wine, but why was only Xiao Nani poisoned? Upon closer examination, she realized that the poison wasn't in the wine, but on Xiao Nani's wine glass. As for why only Xiao Nani was poisoned and she wasn't, Jiang Peihuan couldn't figure it out. Lost in thought, and looking at Xiao Nani on the bed, Jiang Peihuan went to the door and softly called, "Yishao? Your Highness." Yishao, originally a secret guard, immediately recognized Jiang Peihuan's voice. "Your Highness, what happened?" Yishao instantly sensed something was off from Jiang Peihuan's breathing and tone. "Go and fetch Han Feng quickly. Xiao Nani has been poisoned." Understood. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Yishao's expression changed, and she rushed off. A moment later, Han Feng hurriedly entered the room of Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nani, forgetting even to knock on the door. She looked at Xiao Nani lying on the bed, and the expression in Han Feng's eyes was unpleasant. "How could this happen? Your Highness, what poison did Master take?" "I'm not sure about the poison, but one know its antidote. However, a crucial ingredient for the antidote is in the western regions. They'll go get it," Yishao, who was standing by, immediately said. But Jiang Peihuan shook her head. "I've sealed Xiao Nani's acupoints with golden needles to prevent the poison from spreading, but this method won't last long. At most, it can only hold for 10 days. Even if you travel day and night from the capital to the western regions, it will take more than 10 days. So, the only option is for me to take Xiao Nani to the western regions. They'll arrange for someone right away." Han Feng responded immediately. However, Jiang Peihuan stopped him. "You have more important things to do." Facing Han Feng's puzzled look, she continued, "Someone in our mansion is responsible for poisoning Xiao Nani. You stay and investigate." "And do we have someone who know how to disguise themselves?"
Yes.
Seeing Han Feng nod, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "Have someone disguise as me and Xiao Nani. From today on, the Cheng's mansion will be closed to all visitors. By the way, where's the steward?" The wine was delivered by the steward. Although Jiang Peihuan didn't suspect him, he was still involved. However, the news she received about him left her grim-faced. Because Uncle Zhong was already dead upon hearing this, Jiang Peihuan was almost certain that the Uncle Zhong had something to do with the poisoning. She then looked at Han Feng and ordered, "Stay in the capital, guard the mansion, and investigate Xiao Nani's poisoning."
Yes.
Initially, when Han Feng learned of Xiao Nani's poisoning, he was panicked. But after hearing Jiang Peihuan's arrangements, his heart suddenly settled. "Yishao, visit the Huainan Prince's mansion and find the Huainan Prince. Tell him I'm here to collect the favor he owes me."
Yes.
An hour later, Zhao Yong arrived at the Cheng mansion alone. Receiving the message from Yishao, he was puzzled because today was Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan's wedding day. He couldn't fathom why she would summon him at this time. However, upon seeing Xiao Nani lying on the bed, Zhao Yong understood. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, he asked directly, "Has King Cheng been poisoned?" Hearing Zhao Yong's words, Jiang Peihuan said softly, "It seems I've found the right person in you." The last time Zhao Yong quickly found the medicine, Jiang Peihuan felt that he had remarkable medical knowledge. Now she was more convinced. "Your Highness called me today to help find the medicine?" "Not to find medicine, but to accompany me to the western regions. Is the antidote that King Cheng needs in the western regions?"
Yes.
"All right, 111 accompany you, considering it as returning the favor when you saved my mother that day. Thank you. Hearing Zhao Yong's words, Zhang Peihuan softly expressed her gratitude. Choosing Zhao Yong to accompany her was a decision she made after careful consideration. Neither people from the general's mansion nor those from King Cheng's mansion should leave the capital. Chapter 268. Substitute marriage. Looking back and forth, Zhang Peihuan thought that Zhao Yong was the most suitable candidate. Even though Zhao Yong had become the heir of Huainan King, because of his birth mother, Emperor Qi Ming did not have any taboos against him. Therefore, Zhao Yong's entry and exit from the capital was very convenient. After finalizing with Zhao Yong, Zhang Peihuan called Yu Er and Lu Er into the room. Both of them looked worried. They never expected such a thing to happen on their wedding day. You two stay in the mansion, keep things quiet, and act as if I'm still here.
Yes.
Zhang Peihuan still didn't know who the real mastermind behind this was, so she didn't dare let outsiders know the current situation of the Cheng mansion. After everything was prepared, Zhang Peihuan left the mansion with Xiao Nani. Zhao Yong was already waiting at the back door. After Zhang Peihuan got on the carriage with Xiao Nani, a white figure darted into the carriage. Zhao Yong immediately reached for his long sword, but Zhang Peihuan quickly shouted, "Hold on, Prince. That's my pet." The one who rushed into the carriage was none other than Xiao Bai. Hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, Zhao Yong put back his sword, but a surprised look appeared in his eyes because he clearly saw that it was a white wolf. However, Zhao Yong didn't say anything more and ordered his men to move out. Inside the carriage, Zhang Peihuan looked at the suddenly appearing Xiao Bai and gently stroked its head. "Why did you come? Didn't one ask you to stay with Yu Er in the mansion?" Xiao Bai, unable to speak, licked Zhang Peihuan's hand in response. The capital city was destined to be restless that night. With Xiao Nani poisoned, the prince's Qing mansion was in chaos. "Why is it you?" Looking at Shui Ru sitting on the bed, Xiao Junhao's eyes were filled with doubt. After a few seconds, his expression turned to fury. After picking up Jiang Yin from the post station, Xiao Juanhao went to the city center to fetch Lin Mingyao. But when he unveiled the bride's veil, it wasn't Lin Mingyao, but Shui Ru. Seeing the anger in Xiao Junhao's eyes, Shui Ru's heart trembled, but she looked at him pitifully and said, "Your Highness, I've already lost the child in my belly. One can't lose you too. No matter what, you are the one who welcomed me at the door today. So from now on, I'm the second consort of Prince Qing's mansion. Where's Yao Er?" Hearing Shui Ru's words, the anger in Xiao Junhao's eyes intensified, but he held it back. "Your Highness, Miss Lin is here." As soon as Xiao Junhao's voice fell, a servant's voice came from outside. Soon after, Lin Mingyao was brought to Xiao Juanhao. Seeing Shui Ru in a bright red wedding dress, Lin Mingyao's expression darkened. She never expected Shui Ru to dare knock her out and wear her wedding dress. More importantly, the person who had the wedding ceremony with Xiao Juanhao today was Shui Ru, not her. And this ceremony cannot be redone, making Lin Mingyao even more sullen. "Your Highness, she knocked me out and changed into my wedding dress. So what? If it weren't for your suggestion, asking me to go to the general's mansion, how would my child have been lost? Why would one have knocked you out?" Before Lin Mingyao could finish speaking, Shui Ru interrupted her. Hearing this, Lin Mingyao's expression turned even more fierce. Xiao Junhao's eyes were filled with hostility. If this matter spreads, he would be the laughing stock of the entire capital. Or perhaps he already is. "Your Highness, main princess consort has arrived. What is she here for?" Upon hearing the steward's words, Xiao Junhao's already dark expression darkened even more. She mentioned it's about the two-side princess consort. Let her in. Shortly after, Jiang Yin entered the small hall, still dressed in her bright red wedding dress. The vivid color deeply hurt both Lin Mingyao and Shui Ru. Yet, Jiang Yin acted as if she didn't see them, bowing only to Xiao Juanhao. "Greetings, Your Highness. Get up." "Your Highness, I've heard about side consort Lin's situation. However, since you did welcome Miss Shui into the palace today, one suggests we make both Miss Shui and Miss Lin side consort." Upon hearing Jiang Yan's proposal, Lin Mingyao frowned deeply, while Shui Ru's eyes were filled with joy. Originally, when she knocked out Lin Mingyao, it was based on Yishao's idea. Shui Ru hadn't thought she could truly become a side consort, but now, she started to trust Jiang Paihuan's intentions more. Lin Mingyao wanted to protest against Jiang Yan's proposal, but found herself at a loss for words, given that Xiao Juanhao did indeed bring Shui Ru into the palace himself. Let's proceed according to the main princess consort wishes. After a moment of silence, Xiao Juanhao coldly responded. Then, Jiang Yin continued, Your Highness, will you be visiting my chambers tonight or? I will be in your chambers. Even though Xiao Juanhao had a preference for Lin Mingyao, Jiang Yin was the main princess consort. Because of this, he could only stay in her chambers that night. Lin Mingyao's eyes were filled with despair as she watched Xiao Juanhao and Jiang Yin leave together. After she woke up, she rushed to the Qing mansion. She thought that Xiao Juanhao would give her an explanation, but she did not expect such an outcome. Yet, she now had no right to object. After all, the current head of the Lin family was Lin Xingchen, not her father. This is my courtyard. Side consort Shui, please leave. After a long time, Lin Mingyao looked at Shui Ru coldly and said, This courtyard was where Lin Mingyao used to stay in the Qing palace. This time, Shui Ru didn't say much. Upon hearing Lin Mingyao's words, she left immediately. But, just before exiting the door, Shui Ru stopped. They'll remember everything you've done to me. With that, she left Lin Mingyao's courtyard. Meanwhile, Jiang Peihuan, accompanied by Xiao Nani, had left the city area. Seeing Xiao Nani lying in the carriage, a worried look crossed Jiang Peihuan's eyes. She had sealed Xiao Nani's acupuncture points with golden needles. She thought that this would stop the spread of the poison, but when Jiang Peihuan checked Xiao Nani's pulse, she found that the poison was still spreading, but the speed was slow. Originally, Jiang Peihuan had estimated that it would take 10 days, but it seemed that it would only take 8 at most. After covering Xiao Nani with a blanket, she couldn't help but ask the rider outside the carriage, Could we possibly go faster? From outside, Zhao Yong, riding on his horse, heard her request. He frowned but eventually responded softly, Yes. After that, Jiang Peihuan could feel the carriage moving at a much faster pace. By dawn, they had already left the capital, but the snowstorm outside intensified. Queen, please eat something. Chapter 269. Rongmo's companion. At this moment, Yishao's voice sounded outside the window. Jiang Peihuan lifted the curtain and saw ration in Yishao's hand. Because they were outside, there was no way to prepare food, so they had to make up for ration, and they couldn't delay due to Xiao Nani's condition. Jiang Peihuan did not have much of an appetite, but she still took a steamed bun from Yishao's hand and said softly, Tell everyone to drink more hot water.
Yes.
After closing the curtain, Jiang Peihuan took a bite of the bun. Such a journey was nothing new for Jiang Peihuan. She had faced more challenging times with Jiang Hong on the battlefield. While Jiang Peihuan was eating, she heard the sound of horse hooves from behind. Soon after, the carriage Jiang Peihuan was in stopped. Queen, it seems someone is chasing us from behind. Hearing Yishao's voice, Jiang Peihuan immediately stepped out of the carriage. People from behind caught up. At the forefront was a black horse, and the man on its back, dressed in white, was Rong Imo. Seeing him, Jiang Peihuan was full of surprise. Moments later, Rong Imo joined Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nani in their carriage. As the group continued their journey, looking at the man sitting opposite her, Jiang Peihuan softly asked, Young Master Rong, why are you here? I heard from Han Feng about King Nanyes poisoning. I'm quite familiar with the western regions, so one came. You're familiar with the western regions? Jiang Peihuan caught on to this remark. Seeing him nod, Jiang Peihuan immediately asked, Young Master Rong, have you heard of the soul-returning grass? You need the soul-returning grass? Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, a hint of surprise appeared in Rong Mo's eyes. Jiang Peihuan, noticing his reaction, said confidently, So, Master Rong knows about the soul-returning grass. Rong Imo paused for a moment before nodding. The soul-returning grass is a treasure of the Western Region Palace. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. She only knew that the grass was in the western regions, but she had no idea it was a treasure of the palace. No matter what, she had to get this grass. By the way, about the poisoning, Han Feng has already found out about it. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan instinctively looked at Rong Mo. Rong Mo's expression was calm, but a hint of anger appeared in his eyes. He softly said, "The one who poisoned King Cheng was the steward, Uncle Zhong. Who's the mastermind behind it?" Jiang Peihuan had already suspected Uncle Zhong, but she also believed there must be someone behind the scenes. "It's someone from the palace." After a long pause, Rong Mo said in a low voice. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan responded without hesitation, "Is it the great Empress Dowager? How did you know?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Rong Mo's surprise deepened. Jiang Peihuan didn't answer Rong Mo's question but counter-asked, "Do you know why the great Empress Dowager would do this?" She had asked Xiao Nani the same question before, but he didn't provide an answer at that time. However, after recent events, she couldn't help but want to know. "Do you know about King Cheng's origin?" Upon hearing Rong Mo's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded. "I've heard bits and pieces." So the great Empress Dowager repeatedly targeted Xiao Nani because she suspected he wasn't the late emperor's biological son. "It's not a suspicion." "What did you say?" Rong Mo's voice was soft but clear to Jiang Peihuan. Hearing his words, she was taken aback. Looking at Rong Mo, her eyes widened in shock. At this moment, as Rong Mo met Jiang Peihuan's gaze, he continued, "King Cheng, indeed, is not the biological son of the late emperor." Rong Mo's voice was so soft that if one wasn't paying close attention, they wouldn't hear it. But Jiang Peihuan heard it clearly. Xiao Nani was not the biological son of the late emperor. Was this the secret he mentioned before? Jiang Peihuan looked down at the man lying in the carriage, her eyes full of complexity. Xiao Nani knows this himself, doesn't he? Yes, King Cheng knew about it quite early on. Because he knew, that's why he went to war at a young age, wishing to distance himself from the court. However, even so, some people never intended to let him go. As Rong Mo spoke the last line, his eyes were filled with disdain. Silence pervaded the carriage. Neither Jiang Peihuan nor Rong Mo spoke further. In her previous life, Jiang Peihuan had no knowledge of these matters. Back then, she knew Xiao Nani was a powerful king, but in her previous life, Xiao Nani died early. When Jiang Peihuan heard this news back then, she found it puzzling. Thinking back now, perhaps in her past life, Xiao Nani was murdered by the great Empress Dowager. However, in this life, Xiao Nani met her, leading to changes in the past events. Jiang Peihuan didn't speak, but gently held Xiao Nani's hand. She was aware of his affection and the things he did for her. Now, it was her turn to protect him. Seeing Jiang Peihuan's gesture, Rong Mo's eyes softened. However, recalling the news he received on his way here, Rong Mo's expression turned grave again. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, he whispered, "You should prepare yourself mentally. The news from King Cheng's mansion means the great Empress Dowager must already be informed. She won't let this go. I won't let anyone harm him." Hearing Rong Mo's words, Jiang Peihuan replied with determination shining in her eyes. In the Imperial Palace, Sinang Palace. The moment the door to the inner chamber was pushed open, the great Empress Dowager looked towards the entrance. Seeing the person who entered, the great Empress Dowager immediately asked, "Well?" "Your Majesty, King Cheng has indeed been poisoned, but Queen Cheng is taking him towards the western regions." Hearing the old nanny's words, the great Empress Dowager's eyes darkened. "So that bastard Xiao Nani is still alive? Your Majesty, the poison is difficult to cure, and the journey from the capital to the western regions is very far. Perhaps before reaching there, King Cheng might already be dead. No." Before the old nanny could finish, the great Empress Dowager interrupted her. Looking at her, the great Empress Dowager whispered, 111 only be at peace once I'm sure he's dead. Call Zhao Yang for me. I've protected him for so many years. It's time he did something for me." "Your Majesty, are you calling for King Huainan?" Hearing the great Empress Dowager's words, shock filled the old nanny's eyes. Seeing her reaction, the great Empress Dowager softly said, "Others might not know. The seemingly powerless King Huainan has never been a simple person." Chapter 270. The Great Empress Dowager's Plans Go. The old nanny wanted to say something else, but seeing the look in the Great Empress Dowager's eyes, she ultimately didn't say anything. She gave the Great Empress Dowager a bow and softly said, "Yes, I will go at once." An hour later, the king of Huainan, Zhao Yong, walked into Sinang Palace. Everyone in the palace knew that the Great Empress Dowager liked talking to old acquaintances, so when they saw King Huainan entering the Sinang Palace, nobody was surprised. The moment he entered the Sinang Palace, the usual gentleness in King Ilyuanen's eyes vanished, replaced by sharpness. Entering the inner hall of the Sinang Palace, Zhao Yang came forward to salute the Great Empress Dowager. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Get up." After Zhao Yang stood up, the Great Empress Dowager spoke softly. "One called you here today because one have a task that you must personally undertake." Upon hearing the Great Empress Dowager's words, surprise flashed in King Ilyuanen's eyes. "What would Your Majesty have me do?" "I want you to journey to the western regions. No matter what method you employ, Xiaonani must be killed." The Great Empress Dowager then briefly recounted the current situation at Qingcheng Mansion. After concluding, she added, "I've heard your son, now the heir to your title, possesses commendable character. Should Xiaonani fall, a place among the capital's elite will assuredly be open to him." This was both a lure and a threat. Hearing the words of the Great Empress Dowager, a mix of emotions clouded King Ilyuanen's eyes. While many believed the Great Empress Dowager to be devoutly religious, Zhao Yang, having dealt with her for decades, had never bought into her feigned compassion. After a moment of contemplation, Zhao Yang bowed deeply. "As Your Majesty wishes, go. One await your good news."
Yes.
After paying his respects to the Great Empress Dowager, King Huainan made to leave. Yet, as he neared the inner hall's exit, the voice of the Great Empress Dowager echoed from behind. "Wait." He turned. "Does Your Majesty have further instructions? I've heard that Prince Qing and King Cheng have always been at odds. You might consider relaying this information to Prince Qing's mansion."
Yes.
Zhang Peihuan was completely unaware of the events happening within the palace. Night had fallen again, and they had been traveling for a day and a night. At that moment, Zhao Yong's voice came from outside. "Queen, do you need to rest here? Let's rest here for 4 hours." Soon after, the team stopped. Zhang Peihuan lifted the curtain. After sitting in the carriage for such a long time, she felt her body was somewhat stiff. Looking at Rongimo, who was resting with his eyes closed, Zhang Peihuan softly asked, "Would young Master Rong like to step out for a walk?" "No need." Rongimo didn't even open his eyes. Upon hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, he simply replied faintly. Seeing this, Zhang Peihuan didn't say anything more. She got out of the carriage. She hadn't felt it while she was inside, but when she stepped outside, she realized just how piercingly cold it was. The western regions are close to the northern border. The further you go in that direction, the colder it becomes. Zhang Peihuan wore a fiery red cloak, a gift from Xiaonani. When Zhao Yong rode up, the first thing he caught sight of was the blazing red figure of Zhang Peihuan. The deep red cloak accentuated Zhang Peihuan's skin, making it look as white as snow. Hearing the sound, Zhang Peihuan turned to look in Zhao Yong's direction. "Huainan Prince." Seeing him, Zhang Peihuan nodded in acknowledgement. Dismounting his horse, Zhao Yong whispered to her, "Queen, there's an abandoned temple ahead. It may be dilapidated, but it can shelter us from the wind and snow. Shall we head there?" "All right, let's go to the temple." The carriages proceeded directly into the temple grounds. Zhang Peihuan asked Xiao to heat some water. She moistened a cloth with the warm water and wiped down Xiaonani, who was on the carriage. After completing these tasks, she took Xiaonani's pulse. The condition was as before, with the toxins spreading slowly. This was only because Zhang Peihuan had sealed his acupoints with golden needles. Otherwise, Xiaonani would have succumbed to the poison long ago. "My queen, please have some food." The only thing she could do now was to take care of Jiang Peihuan and ensure she didn't fall ill. "You eat too," Jiang Peihuan softly said as she took the rations. Rong Imo also descended from his carriage. Everyone sat around the fire. Initially, Jiang Peihuan was worried that Rong Imo, who appeared pampered, wouldn't be used to the dry rations. Yet, he seemed indifferent to it. "Do you think I, a pampered young master, can't endure a little hardship?" Rong Mo's voice reached her ears. She didn't deny it, but just nodded. Seeing her response, Rong Imo chuckled. "If a sheltered lady like you can endure, why can't a grown man like me?" She didn't respond. Zhao Yong, sitting opposite them, listened to their conversation silently. But suddenly, his expression changed, as did Jiang Peihuan's and Rong Mo's. "Someone's coming." As Zhao Yong's words rang out, the temple doors were violently thrust open. Dozens of men in black appeared. "Protect the queen." Upon seeing this, Yishao shouted and immediately stood in front of Jiang Peihuan. "Queen, get on the carriage first," Zhao Yong commanded coldly at that moment. Jiang Peihuan, eyes filled with a fierce glint, looked at the men in black. Yet, she said nothing and heeded Zhao Yong's words, boarding the carriage. She originally wanted to call Rong Imo to join her on the carriage, but she noticed he had already unsheathed a flexible sword from his waist with great proficiency. At a glance, he was clearly a trained martial artist. Seeing this, a touch of surprise flashed in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. She now understood why Rong Imo could travel to the western regions. Yishao guarded Jiang Peihuan's carriage, while Zhao Yong, Rong Imo, and their men charged forward. The men in black were masters in their own right. However, the ones accompanying Zhao Yong and Rong Imo were also top-notch. For a while, both sides clashed fiercely without either gaining an upper hand. Suddenly, a masked man in black darted towards the carriage. His speed was astonishingly fast. Even Zhao Yong and Rong Imo couldn't intercept him in time. "Queen, be careful." Upon seeing this, Yishao urgently called out. Inside the carriage, Jiang Peihuan had already drawn a black whip from her waist. But before she could swing it, a white figure swiftly lunged at the man in black. A sharp wolf's howl echoed throughout the temple. Chapter 271. Ambush on the road. Xiao Bai burst out from the carriage and directly pounced on the man in black. Seeing the sudden appearance of Xiao Bai, the man in black's eyes were full of shock. However, he reacted quickly. When he saw Xiao Bai pounce, he immediately drew his long sword, directly aiming for Xiao Bai's heart. Jiang Peihuan, who was on the carriage, saw this scene and quickly shouted, "Xiao Bai, dodge!" Xiao Bai, who was almost grown up, was fast. Seeing the man in black draw his sword, Xiao Bai jumped aside, not only dodging but also biting the man's arm. When bitten by Xiao Bai, the man in black grunted, but his sword directly targeted Xiao Bai again. Jiang Peihuan, from the carriage, swung her long whip. The whip wrapped around the man in black's arm. With his arm entangled by Jiang Peihuan's whip, the man's eyes showed a hint of gloom. With a strong pull, he dragged Jiang Peihuan off the carriage. At this moment, he raised the sword in his hand again. "Xiao Bai, come back." Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Xiao Bai rushed to her side. The man in black glanced at the wound on his arm, his expression growing worse. Turning to Jiang Peihuan, he coldly said, "Move aside if you don't want to die." "Who sent you? The great Empress Dowager?" Jiang Peihuan stood in front of the carriage, her eyes coldly fixed on the man in black. After hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the man showed a hint of surprise but soon regained composure. He didn't speak further but aimed his sword at Jiang Peihuan. While engaging with the man in black, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were filled with shock. This man's an expert in martial arts, and am no match for him. Yet, she showed no sign of backing down. Fortunately, Xiao Bai was always by her side, assisting even though it couldn't stop the man. "I wanted to spare you, but if you seek death, ill oblige," the man said, approaching Jiang Peihuan on the ground. Just then, a cold wind blew, and Zhao Yong appeared. He stood in front of Jiang Peihuan and said, "Queen, you go first. They'll handle this." Jiang Peihuan hesitated, but Zhao Yong insisted, "Go." As he spoke, Zhao Yong charged at the man in black. Both were stunned upon clashing. Their eyes met, and Zhao Yong was shocked. Their eyes met, and Zhao Yong was shocked. "My queen, let's go." At that moment, Rongemo and Yi Xiao came to Jiang Paihuan's side. Yi Xiao pushed her onto the carriage, and they rushed out of the temple, with Xiao Bai jumping on too. Seeing the departing carriage, the man in black ordered, "Chase them. Stop them." At Zhao Yong's command, his men blocked the attackers. Only when Jiang Paihuan's carriage vanished into the darkness did Zhao Yong turn to the man in black. "Father?" Hearing Zhao Yong, the man's expression shifted, but he coldly responded, "You've mistaken." Without saying more, Zhao Yong, holding his sword, stood at the temple entrance. "Whatever the reason, I can't let you pursue. One owe this to the queen." Seeing Zhao Yong's stance, the man in black smirked, "Even if you stop me, can you stop the others?" Hearing this, Zhao Yong looked grim. Without further words, he readied his sword again. An hour later, many of the black-clothed men had fallen, and Zhao Yong's side also suffered significant losses. Looking at the man in black, Zhao Yong said to his men, "Let's go." The man in black instinctively wanted to give chase, but were stopped by another group appearing from behind. "Don't chase them. Master, what about the palace?" "They'll handle the great Empress Dowager," the man in black man said. As he removed his mask, it revealed the face of King Huainan. Inside the carriage, Jiang Peihuan sat silently, her expression cold and indifferent. Suddenly, the horse neighed loudly. Then, the carriage came to an abrupt halt. As Jiang Peihuan lifted the curtain, she saw black-clothed men blocking their path. They were not from the same group as before, but she deduced that their intentions were the same. Upon seeing these men, Rongemo drew his long sword. Yi Xiao also quickly prepared to defend. Standing in the carriage, Jiang Peihuan surveyed the scene. After a careful observation, she realized that the lead man in black was intently watching her. Their eyes met, and a surge of animosity welled up within Jiang Peihuan. To her astonishment, it was Xiao Juanhao. Seeing her reaction, Xiao Juanhao lunged towards her, his long sword aimed straight for her heart. "Xiao Bai, protect Xiao Nani." As Xiao Bai prepared to leap into action, it heard Jiang Paihuan's command. It let out a howl, indicating its understanding. Facing the attacking Xiao Juanhao, Jiang Peihuan drew her sword. She had anticipated this for a long time. In her previous life, it was only towards the end that Jiang Peihuan discovered Xiao Junhao's martial arts skills, which were impressive. So, in this reincarnated life, she had trained even harder. This was why, even when clashing with Xiao Juanhao now, she was holding her own. Seeing her impressive skills, Xiao Junhao's eyes widened in shock. While fighting, Jiang Paihuan's moves were deadly. Indeed, she wanted to kill Xiao Juanhao directly. "You want to kill me that badly?" Xiao Juanhao blocked her sword, gripping her wrist tightly. With a twist, he pulled her close to him. He looked down at her, his voice cold. Without responding, Jiang Peihuan raised her leg and aimed a kick at his face. Seeing her movement, Xiao Juanhao instinctively stepped back. The man looked down at the person in front of him and said coldly. Hearing the voice in her ear, Jian Peihuan did not speak. Instead, she raised her leg and kicked back hard, straight at Xiao Junhao's face. Seeing Jian Peihuan's actions, Xiao Juanhao subconsciously took 2 steps back. Jiang Peihuan swiftly turned away from him, drawing her whip. With force, she lashed it out. The black whip struck Xiao Junhao's face, tearing off his mask and revealing a face marked with blood. Chapter 272. Arriving at the western regions from the brow bone to the corner of the mouth, a red and swollen blood mark clearly appeared on Xiao Junhao's face. Xiao Juanhao reached out and touched his face, feeling a sharp pain on his cheek. He turned to look at Jiang Peihuan with anger and complexity in his eyes. But Jiang Peihuan, without any hesitation, flicked her wrist and the whip in her hand lashed out at Xiao Juanhao again. However, this time, Xiao Juanhao dodged quickly. Throughout the ensuing confrontation, Xiao Juanhao showed no mercy, leaving a sword wound on Jiang Peihuan. But he himself wasn't faring any better. His injuries were even more severe than Jiang Paihuan's. At that moment, Rong Imo returned to Jiang Paihuan's side. Upon seeing Xiao Juanhao, a glint appeared in Yong Mo's eyes. But soon, he acted as if he didn't recognize Xiao Juanhao and attacked him without holding back. When fighting alone, Xiao Juanhao could manage, but when Rong Imo and Jiang Peihuan teamed up, he was no match. When Xiao Juanhao was knocked to the ground, Jiang Peihuan's sword thrust forward, only to be stopped by Rong Imo facing Jiang Peihuan's puzzled look. Rong Imo whispered, "Killing him will only bring trouble upon yourself." Jiang Peihuan's eyes were filled with fury, but hearing Rong Mo's words, she sheathed her sword. She didn't care about the consequences for herself, but she couldn't jeopardize the Jiang family. "Your Highness, if the Emperor learns that you attacked your own uncle, he probably won't spare you either. So, I advise you to behave yourself." With that, Rong Imo boarded the carriage. Due to the delay, daybreak had come, but the group didn't plan to rest and headed directly towards the western regions. By dusk, Zhao Yong caught up with Jiang Peihuan. Seeing him unharmed, Jiang Peihuan sighed with relief. "Queen Sheng, don't you want to inquire about the men in black?" Seeing that Jin Peihuan was silent, Zhao Yong could not help but look at her. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan looked at Zhao Yong and after a pause, she said, "There's no need to say more, Prince, I'm already aware." The moment she saw King Huainan, Jiang Peihuan recognized him. That's why she had directly asked if he was sent by the great Empress Dowager. "Why then?" Facing Zhao Yong's puzzled eyes, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "For me, the most important thing now is to find the cure for Xiao Nani. Other matters can wait until they return." After that, Jiang Peihuan continued north. The further they traveled, the colder it became. But, fortunately, they didn't encounter any more trouble. On the 7th day, Jiang Peihuan finally saw the gates to the western regions. At this time, Xiao Nanya's complexion had turned purple. Jiang Peihuan had to administer acupuncture to him daily, but the golden needles could no longer suppress the poison in his body. In the coming days, she must find the soul-returning glass. "My queen, can we just enter the city like this? They might not let us through." Looking at the city gate, Yishao whispered. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to reply, she heard Rong Mo's voice, "Follow me in." With that, Rong Mo got off the carriage and mounted a horse. Jiang Peihuan was puzzled but didn't question him. Instead, she instructed Yishao to follow behind Rong Mo, along with Zhao Yong. Originally, when they arrived in the western regions, Jiang Peihuan intended to send Zhao Yong back, having agreed that he would only accompany her to the western regions. However, Zhao Yong insisted on returning with Jiang Peihuan. Seeing his persistence, Jiang Peihuan didn't say anything more. Unknown to her, Rong Mo took out a token from his possession. Upon seeing the token, the gatekeeping soldiers immediately let them pass. As they entered the city, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but lift the curtain of the carriage to look out. What she saw left her astonished. She had always assumed that the northern regions would be economically backward, but now, the streets she saw were bustling and prosperous. At that moment, Rong Mo also climbed into the carriage. Seeing the surprise in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, he remarked, "The new ruler of the western regions is a capable person. The western regions have undergone significant changes in the past 5 years." "You've met the new ruler of the western regions?" Jiang Peihuan asked. At her question, Rong Mo's eyes flickered, but he remained silent. They hadn't traveled for long when an unfamiliar voice speaking Mandarin called out, "Young Master Rong, the ruler of western regions invites you to the palace." Hearing this, curiosity filled Jiang Peihuan's eyes as she turned to look at Rong Mo lifting the curtain of the carriage. Rong Mo faced a group of armored men. The leader, a tall man, looked at Rong Mo with great respect. That man also noticed Jiang Peihuan inside the carriage. After a moment's thought, he continued, "The ruler of the western region also said that those traveling with young Master Rong are also welcome in the palace." Rong Mo looked at Jiang Peihuan. "If you don't want to go, let's go. After all, the soul-returning glass is in the palace," she replied. Jiang Peihuan's primary reason for coming to the western regions was to obtain the soul-returning glass. Even without the day's events, she would still find a way into the palace. They proceeded directly to the palace of the western regions. Zhang Peihuan, Zhao Yong, and the others were settled in a palace hall, while Rongemo was taken separately. After settling Xiaonani, Zhang Peihuan turned to Yi Xiao and asked, Yi Xiao, do you know of any connection between Rongemo and the western regions? Thinking that Yi Xiao had been by Xiaonan's side before, Zhang Peihuan felt it right to inquire. However, Yi Xiao shook her head in response. I've never heard of any relationship between young Master Rong and the western regions, but if there is a connection, Yi Xiao added, it would be that young Master Rong once lived in the western regions for some time. Confused, Zhang Peihuan pondered on this revelation. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Yi Xiao answered, and the visitor was the military officer they had seen earlier in the streets. From Rongemo, Zhang Peihuan learned that this man was called Xin Yin, the chief guard of the king of the western regions. Queen Cheng, the ruler of western region, invites you over, Xin Yin said softly after bowing to Zhang Peihuan. Zhang Peihuan nodded and followed him. In the western region's palace, she wasn't too concerned about Xiaonan's safety. Still, she left Yi Xiao behind for assurance. With Zhao Yong also close by, she felt at ease. However, as she followed Xin Yin around a corner, she saw Zhao Yong approaching. Zhao Yong didn't look at Zhang Peihuan but spoke directly to Xin Yin. One have to guard the queen, so I must go with her. All right, Prince, come along, Xin Yin agreed. Zhang Peihuan had expected Xin Yin to refuse, but to her surprise, he simply nodded in agreement after hearing Zhao Yong's words. Chapter 273. Give me a child. When Zhang Peihuan and Zhao Yong entered the palace of the western region, they overheard an argument inside. It's none of your business, and don't you dare threaten me. The voice belonged to Rongemo. Upon hearing this, Zhang Peihuan's eyes widened in surprise. Although her encounters with Rongemo had been infrequent, she could tell that he was an incredibly cold person. The fact that someone managed to provoke him like this made her curious. Your Majesty, we have guests, announced another voice. Let them in. Surprisingly, this reply was a soft, enchanting feminine voice. Both Zhang Peihuan and Zhao Yong were taken aback. The ruler of the western region was not only a woman, but also an extremely beautiful one. I heard you've come to the western region for the soul returning grass? The western region's queen spoke directly as soon as she saw Zhang Peihuan. At first glance, Zhang Peihuan noticed the queen's fair skin, bright eyes, and naturally wavy hair. She was so stunning. She resembled a fairy. Hearing the queen's words, Zhang Peihuan bowed slightly and replied softly, Yes, I've come to the western region for the soul-returning grass. It's simple, the queen responded promptly. As long as you can convince him to stay, he'll give you the grass. She pointed directly at Rongemo as she spoke. Zhang Peihuan looked towards Rongemo, her eyes filled with surprise. However, Rongemo, upon hearing the queen's words, became visibly angry. Yao Ji, he said, his voice tinged with anger. I've told you before. I will not stay in the western region, and one will not marry you. Yao Ji, the western region's queen, remained unfazed. You also said you'd never return to the western region, yet here you are, she remarked casually. Nothing is impossible when it comes to you. Even if it seems impossible, we'll make it possible. Queen Cheng, the queen continued, I can give you the soul-returning grass, but you must persuade Rongemo to stay. Your Majesty, may first ask why you want young Master Rong to stay? Zhang Peihuan inquired. To marry him, of course. Zhang Peihuan was taken aback, even though she had somewhat anticipated this answer. Yao Ji's directness was somewhat disarming. Zhang Peihuan appreciate forthright people like the queen. When she heard Yao Ji's words, she said softly, Your Majesty, but feelings can't be forced. Why not? Yao Ji asked with a smile. Zhang Peihuan was stunned. If it wasn't for the sincere look in Yao Ji's eyes, she might have mistaken it for mockery. If Rongemo stays and marries me, doesn't he become mine? Yao Ji continued, challenging Zhang Peihuan's beliefs. Zhang Peihuan was momentarily lost for words. Even as an observer, she could understand Rongme's frustration. Even Zhao Yong, who had remained silent, showed a hint of sympathy for Rong Imo upon hearing Yao Jis words. Hoping to steer the conversation back on track, Zhang Peihuan asked, "Your Majesty, can we exchange the soul-returning grass for something else? My husband's life is at stake. But I have everything I want, except for Rong Imo," Yao Ji replied. Feeling exasperated, Zhang Peihuan turned to Rong Imo. "Young Master Rong, perhaps you could," but she couldn't finish her sentence, catching the cold look in Rong Mo's eyes. Yet, it was clear Rong Imo had discerned her meaning from her tone. Coldly, Rong Imo glanced at Zhang Peihuan and then looked at Yao Ji, saying, "As long as you are willing to give me the soul-returning grass, aside from staying and marrying you, I can agree to any other conditions you put forth." "Really? Let me think." Hearing Rong Mo's words, Yao Ji was lost in thought. However, Zhang Peihuan grew somewhat anxious. Xiao Nanya's current condition didn't leave them much time to wait for Yao Jis' decision. "But my friend is running out of time. So, you need to give me an answer quickly. What if I want you to give me a child? What did you say?" Before Rong Imo could finish speaking, Yao Ji looked at him and asked. Hearing this, Rong Imo was immediately stunned, his face full of astonishment. Zhang Peihuan also turned to look at Yao Ji. If she wasn't certain there was nothing wrong with her hearing, she would have doubted if she heard correctly. Yet, Yao Jis' next words confirmed she hadn't misunderstood. "I said, I want you to give me a child. If you're unwilling to stay or marry me, then at least grant me a child. If you promise this, one will give you the soul-returning grass." "I, Rong Imo, one have already compromised. You were the one who said that aside from staying and marrying, any other condition would be accepted. Are you going back on your word now? If that's the case, one absolutely won't give you the soul-returning grass." Yao Ji didn't even wait for Rong Imo to finish and directly cut him off. The entire hall fell silent after her words. After what felt like an eternity, Zhang Peihuan heard Rong Imo say, "All right, I promise. So, when will you give me a child?" Rong Imo, Zhang Peihuan, Zhao Yong. An hour later, Zhang Peihuan received a wooden box from Xinyan. Carefully opening the box, she saw a small, vibrant green grass inside. The box seemed to have some kind of preservation effect. The grass looked as if it had just been freshly plucked. Zhang Peihuan's eyes were full of joy as she looked at the small plant. Because this was the soul-returning grass. "Yishao, go prepare the other herbs. Tonight, I will cure Xiao Nani." "Yes, my queen." Hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, Yishao quickly left the inner chamber. Knock, knock. Just as Yishao left, there was a knock on the door. It was Xinyan. Seeing him, Zhang Peihuan asked softly, "Master Si, what brings you here?" "Queen Sheng, the queen wishes to see you. Now." Seeing Xinyan nod, Zhang Peihuan softly replied, "All right, I'll head over." Xinyan led Zhang Peihuan to Yao Jis' palace. As soon as they entered, Zhang Peihuan saw clothes scattered all over the bed, with Yao Ji dressed in only a single garment. "You've arrived?" Chapter 274. Curing the poison. Upon seeing Zhang Peihuan, a hint of a smile appeared in Yao Jis' eyes. Even though Zhang Peihuan hadn't known Yao Ji for long, her impression of her was excellent. This was mainly because Yao Jis' demeanor was pure and genuine, even if she sometimes said things that left Zhang Peihuan unsure of how to respond. As Zhang Peihuan approached Yao Ji and was about to bow, Yao Ji quickly grabbed her hand. "Come help me look at this." While speaking, Yao Ji pointed to the clothes on the bed. "Queen Sheng, tell me, how do women from the Qi Kingdom dress on their wedding night? Or tell me, how do the men in Qi Kingdom prefer their women to dress?" Hearing Yao Jis' words, Zhang Peihuan looked at the clothes on the bed, which were mainly from the western regions. After pondering for a moment, Zhang Peihuan asked, "Do you intend to wear this for young Master Rong to see?" After pondering for a moment, Zhang Peihuan asked, "Does your Majesty want to wear it for young Master Rong to see?" "Yes, Queen Sheng. Do you know what kind of attire Rong Imo prefers on women?" "I'm really not sure." Zhang Peihuan hadn't had much interaction with Rong Imo, so she genuinely didn't know his preferences. But seeing Yao Jis' disappointed look, she whispered, "Young Master Rong comes from a scholarly family. Women from Qi Kingdom dress modestly. Your Majesty might, perhaps, try on this white dress. Saying this, Zhang Peihuan picked up a long white skirt from the bed. Hearing her suggestion, Yao Ji immediately tried on the white dress. Queen Cheng, do one look good in this? Yao Ji looked radiant in the white dress, which cascaded in layers. The person Zhang Peihuan had seen wearing the most white was Lin Mingyao. At first, she thought Lin Mingyao looked pretty in white, but Yao Ji, draped in the same color, outshone her by miles. Looking into Yao Ji's eyes, Zhang Peihuan nodded seriously. Your Majesty looks stunning. Then I'll wear it for Rendezvous tonight. Seeing the joy in Yao Ji's eyes and thinking of Rendezvous' attitude towards her, Zhang Peihuan wanted to say something. But recalling Yao Ji's words and actions, she ultimately remained silent. After a brief chat with Yao Ji, Zhang Peihuan left. She needed to prepare an antidote for Xiao Nani, whose condition was deteriorating. Just as Zhang Peihuan arrived at her residence, she saw Rongimo waiting at the door, seemingly for her. Young Master Rong, were you waiting for me?
Yes.
Upon hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, Rongimo nodded, meeting her gaze, and said directly, do you have a non-harmful sleeping drug? Zhang Peihuan's eyes flashed momentarily. She asked assertively, you want to use it on the queen? Rongimo nodded, confirming her suspicion. If you do this, she will be heartbroken. I promised her a child to save King Cheng, but I can't give her one. It's not good for her. Zhang Peihuan didn't know the full story between Rongimo and Yao Ji, so she refrained from judging. However, while handing over the sleeping drug, she informed him of Yao Ji's earlier request for help in choosing clothes. Rongmo's eyes showed mixed emotions upon hearing this, but he remained silent. After Rongmo left, Zhang Peihuan entered her room. My queen, the medicines you requested are all prepared. The table was filled with various herbs. Zhang Peihuan approached the bed and took Xiao Nanya's pulse. The poison was nearing his heart. She released his hand, checked the herbs, and then instructed Yi Xiao, prepare a bath and boil some water.
Yes.
A moment later, a bucket filled with a dark medicinal bath appeared in the room. The entire room was filled with a pungent odor, and steam rose from the bath. Zhang Peihuan removed all the clothes from Xiao Nani and then helped him into the bath. As soon as Xiao Nani sat down, Zhang Peihuan saw his lips turn blue-purple. The heat accelerated the spread of the poison within Xiao Nani, but because Zhang Peihuan sealed his meridians, the toxins surged uncontrollably within him. My queen, Prince Huainan has arrived. Let him in. Zhao Yong entered the room and immediately saw Xiao Nani in the bath. After bowing slightly to Zhang Peihuan, he whispered, Queen Cheng, is there anything I can assist with? I do have a request for Prince Huainan. Meeting Zhao Yong's gaze, Zhang Peihuan spoke directly. For the next hour, I need to administer acupuncture to the King Cheng. Please guard the door for me and do not let anyone enter, no matter who it is. Understood. After hearing Zhang Peihuan's request, Zhao Yong nodded seriously. He then moved to stand guard outside the door. Zhang Peihuan continued to watch Xiao Nani intently. When she saw his complexion turning bluish-purple, she told Yi Xiao, prepare the golden needles. At her command, Yi Xiao spread out a cloth, revealing a row of golden needles. Zhang Peihuan quickly picked them up and swiftly began inserting them into Xiao Nanya's back. Before long, Xiao Nanya's back was filled with these golden needles. After an hour, the areas around the inserted needles began oozing dark blood. Bring me the soul-returning grass. Taking the soul-returning grass from Yi Xiao's hand, Zhang Peihuan squeezed out its juice and fed it to Xiao Nani. After he swallowed it, his complexion improved slightly. However, this was the most critical moment. Zhang Peihuan had to watch over Xiao Nani to prevent the poison from spreading further. If it did, all their efforts would be in vain. Xiao Nani was covered in sweat, his eyes tightly shut. As Zhang Peihuan kept her focus on Xiao Nani, sounds of fighting reached her ears. Hearing this, her brow furrowed. Yi Xiao glanced at Zhang Peihuan and Xiao Nani, quickly saying, My queen, I'll check it out. Without waiting for a response, Yi Xiao rushed out. The sounds of battle intensified. Looking at the needles on Xiao Nanya's back, A sense of urgency filled Jiang Paihuan's eyes. My queen. The door was thrown open, and Yishao returned, a worried expression on his face. My queen. There are troops attacking the palace. Attacking the palace? Who is it? Hearing Yishao's words, Jiang Peihuan was filled with concern. Young Master Rong said it's the Northern Border Army. Why would the Northern Border Army suddenly attack the Western Region Palace? Hearing this, Yishao shook his head. At that moment, there was an urgent knock on the door. Chapter 275. Lin Rahai appears. It was Zhao Yong, Queen Sheng. The outside army has broken in. We must leave now. Hearing Zhao Yong's words, Jiang Peihuan instinctively glanced at Xiao Nani in the bathtub. The golden needles in his back continued to seep black blood, albeit less than before. However, the urging from outside grew more urgent. Just as Jiang Peihuan pulled the golden needles from Xiao Nani's back, Zhao Yong burst into the room. Let's go. Zhao Yong's expression was grim. Seeing the look in his eyes, Jiang Peihuan didn't hesitate. She grabbed a cloak from the bed and draped it over Xiao Nani. Then, Zhao Yong went forward to carry Xiao Nani and head outside. Once outside, Jiang Peihuan realized the entire doorway was filled with soldiers wearing armor from the Qi Kingdom. Queen Sheng, we must leave. Yishao and the men Zhao Yong brought with him held back the soldiers, while Jiang Peihuan and Zhao Yong, carrying Xiao Nani, quickly retreated. As they turned a corner, Jiang Peihuan spotted Rong Imo, accompanied by Yao Ji and Xin Yan. Yao Ji's eyes were full of worry, but she remained calm. Seeing Jiang Peihuan and the others, she whispered, "Come with me to the secret chamber." The Western Region Palace was in the city center, making escape nearly impossible. So, upon hearing Yao Ji's words, everyone followed her lead. At that moment, a familiar voice echoed from behind Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan? Upon hearing this voice, she turned around. Through the crowd, Jiang Peihuan saw Lin Rahai mounted on a horse. At this moment, Lin Rahai's face no longer had the elegance he had in the capital. His face revealed some vicissitudes of life, but at this moment, his gaze towards Jiang Peihuan was dark. When their eyes met, Lin Rahai's were filled with malevolence. Jiang Peihuan, today, I will kill you. Thinking of Lin Xingqian as the new head of the Lin family, and blaming Jiang Peihuan as the root of all troubles, Lin Rahai wished nothing more than to spill her blood. Zhao Yong, carrying Xiao Nani, silently shielded Jiang Peihuan. Hearing Lin Rahai's words, he coldly retorted, "General Lin, are you not afraid of the Emperor's punishment for moving the northern border soldiers without permission? If I dared to act, I wouldn't care about the consequences. Everything I had was ruined by Jiang Peihuan. Only her death can quench my rage." At this moment, Jiang Peihuan finally understood why the army attacked the Western Region Palace. "Don't waste time with him. Let's move." Rong Imo, hearing their conversation, spoke up. Hearing Rong Imo, Yao Ji also urgently added, "Yes, to the secret chamber." With that, Yao Ji took the lead. Jiang Peihuan, walking beside Zhao Yong, occasionally checked on Xiao Nani's condition. Suddenly pulling out the golden needles meant that the poison had already spread. If it wasn't forced out soon, it could damage Xiao Nani's internal organs. Hence, Jiang Peihuan was deeply anxious. She could no longer worry about other matters, focusing solely on following Yao Ji. But as they progressed, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but glance back at Lin Rahai. To her surprise, he didn't order a pursuit. Witnessing this, doubt clouded her eyes. "We're almost there." Jiang Peihuan heard Yao Ji's voice as soon as they arrived at a fake mountain in the palace. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to sigh in relief, she heard the sound of an arrow piercing the air. Without hesitation, she drew her whip and lashed out. An arrow was directly snapped in half. If Jiang Peihuan hadn't reacted quickly, that arrow would have struck Yao Ji. Seeing this, fear filled Yao Ji's eyes. "Protect the queen." Xin Yan had already drawn his sword, and with others, they formed a protective circle around Yao Ji. Jiang Peihuan remained silent, instead focusing on the newcomer. In front of her stood a woman in a black gown from the western regions, resembling Yao Ji closely. "Sister." Where are you headed? The woman in black, holding a bow and arrow, smiled as she spoke, her gaze on Yao Ji, who was shielded by Xin Yin. Before Yao Ji could respond, Xin Yin, with coldness in his eyes, said, Princess Xueji, how dare you attempt to assassinate the queen? As long as she dies, I will be the ruler of the western regions. You. Upon hearing Xueji's declaration, Xin Yin's eyes darkened further. Yao Ji, with anger in her eyes, asked, Did you bring those soldiers? Not me. They're here for the Queen Cheng behind you. However, 1 a.m. indeed here for you. Sister, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Finishing her statement, Xueji turned to her soldiers. Whoever kills Yao Ji will be promoted to the rank of general. The soldiers looked at Yao Ji with fiery determination. Seeing this, Xin Yin's anger deepened. You traitors! Have you forgotten your loyalty lies with the queen? Xin Yin, you cannot let your personal affection for my sister influence others to rebel. You're talking nonsense. Even when surrounded by Xueji and her soldiers, Xin Yin was just enraged. But at these words, there was a shadow in his eyes. Xin Yin glanced at Yao Ji, and seeing her eyes fixed on Xueji, he sighed in relief, though with a hint of disappointment. Then, Xin Yin turned to Rong Imo. Young Master Rong, please protect Her Majesty. Xin Yin? Before Rong Imo could respond, Xin Yin had already charged forward, pushing Yao Ji into Rong Mo's arms. Your Majesty, to the secret chamber. After saying this, Xin Yin directly rushed at Xueji, and Xueji, hearing this, urgently shouted, Stop them! Xin Yin, come back! Yao Ji walked to the side of the fake Mutin and kept turning a stone with her hands. Soon, a pathway opened up before them. Go, inside. Zhao Yong carried Xiaonani forward, and Jiang Peihuan followed. At Rongmo's words, they hurried into the path. At this moment, Yao Ji shouted out to Xin Yin outside. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan quickly turned back. To everyone's astonishment, Jiang Peihuan drew her whip, swung it towards Xin Yin, and shouted, Catch it! Hearing her voice, Xin Yin tightly grabbed onto the whip. Jiang Peihuan then forcefully pulled the whip back, causing Xin Yin to be lifted off the ground. He landed beside the fake mountain. Seeing this, a smile appeared in Yao Ji's eyes. Xin Yin, quickly, come inside. Xin Yin nodded and hurriedly moved toward the pathway. Chapter 276. Attacked. A long arrow was shot directly towards Yao Ji. Standing beside Yao Ji, Rong Imo instinctively reached out, but it was already too late. At this moment, Xin Yin lunged forward. Xin Yin grabbed Yao Ji just in time, and the arrow pierced into his back. Xueji, the one who shot the arrow, watched the scene with deep regret in her eyes. But the fake mountain had already closed. Xin Yin? On the inner wall of the fake mountain, Yao Ji looked at Xin Yin, who had collapsed on top of her, her eyes filled with worry. I am fine. Jiang Peihuan hurriedly approached and checked Xin Yin's pulse. Seeing that Xin Yin was about to speak, she whispered, Don't talk for now. After checking his pulse thoroughly, Jiang Peihuan sighed in relief. It's okay. The heart meridian is not injured. Yi Xiao, give me the hemostatic medicine. My queen, the medicine is here. It was very dark inside the fake mountain. Yi Xiao handed the medicine bottle to Jiang Peihuan. At this moment, a faint light illuminated the air. It was Rong Imo lighting a match. Using the light, Jiang Peihuan swiftly pulled the arrow from Xin Yin's back and poured the medicine on the wound. Finally, she wrapped it with gauze. After all this, Jiang Peihuan told Xin Yin, Be careful with the wound, don't let it touch water, and it will be fine after some time. Thank you, Queen Cheng. The person who spoke was Yao Ji. Hearing her, Jiang Peihuan softly replied, Your Majesty, you don't need to thank me. After all, today's events occurred because of me. It's my fault for causing you trouble. No, don't blame yourself. Xueji has been wanting to take the throne for a long time. You think hiding in this secret chamber will keep you safe? Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, Xueji's voice echoed from a distance. Upon hearing this, the expressions of Jiang Peihuan and the others changed. Jiang Peihuan turned to Yao Ji. Your Majesty, does Princess Shueji know about this secret chamber? She knows about its perimeter. Let's go to the lower level. Saying this, Yao Ji moved ahead, and the others quickly followed. The footsteps behind them became faster. Huan air. At this moment, Xiaonani's voice reached Jiang Peihuan's ears. Hearing his voice, joy filled Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Xiaonani, you're awake? Zhao Yong quickly set Xiaonani down, and Jiang Peihuan went to support him. His voice was hoarse. In the dimness, Jiang Peihuan couldn't see his face but felt the strength in his grip. Split up. Leaning on Jiang Peihuan, Xiaonani whispered, this secret chamber is built based on the Bagua diagram. Different paths lead to different exits. We should split up. All right, then let's split up. Without hesitation, Jiang Peihuan agreed. Just as Jiang Peihuan and Xiaonani turned to the left path, the people behind them vanished. All Jiang Peihuan heard was Yishao's shout. It's okay. It's safer if we scatter. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's backward glance, Xiaonani whispered. Supporting Xiaonani, Jiang Peihuan slowly moved forward. After what seemed like a long time, Jiang Peihuan saw light. They had walked into a room made entirely of stone. However, Xiaonani's hand was now cold to the touch. Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but stop. Xiaonani? Supporting Xiaonani, she had him sit down on a stone bed, looking at him with deep concern in her eyes. I'm fine. Seeing Jiang Peihuan's worried look, he gave a soft laugh. However, Jiang Peihuan noticed that Xiaonani's face was extremely pale, and he was trembling as he spoke. She quickly took off her cloak and wrapped it around Xiaonani. At first, Xiaonani was still able to converse with Jiang Peihuan, but soon he lost consciousness, murmuring about how cold he was. Jiang Peihuan felt his pulse and found a poisonous toxin circulating within him. Drawing out a gold needle from her possession, she inserted it directly into Xiaonani's chest. Xiaonani continued to shiver. After a short while, there were numerous gold needles covering him. Seeing the blackened blood oozing out from the needles, Jiang Peihuan let out a sigh of relief. 2 hours later, Jiang Peihuan removed the needles. Xiaonani's complexion was a tad better than before, but he continued to shiver. Jiang Peihuan hugged him tightly, yet it seemed to have no effect. After a long while, she seemed to make a decision, and she undid her waistband, removing her clothing. Then she embraced Xiaonani and covered herself with his cloak. Just as she moved closer, Xiaonani tightly held onto her. Feeling her warmth, he finally stopped shivering. The moment she touched Xiaonani, she felt a piercing cold. When embraced by him, she couldn't help but shiver. After what felt like a long time, Jiang Peihuan felt some warmth emanating from Xiaonani. Then, she heard his deep voice, Huan air? Upon hearing his voice, she instinctively looked up at him. In the dim light, all she could see was her own pale skin reflecting back. Xiaonani's eyes suddenly darkened. Huan air?
Yes.
As she replied. He moved forward to kiss her lips. This kiss was different from the past. It was careful and somewhat exploratory. Xiaonani. When he released her, she whispered his name. Their mutual desire evident, he held on to Jiang Peihuan and turned them over. With the flickering lantern light, the two held on to each other tightly on the stone bed. Before falling asleep, all Jiang Peihuan could smell was the cold scent from Xiaonani mixed with a faint medicinal aroma. When she woke up, she was alone on the stone bed. If not for the cloak she was wrapped in, she might have believed everything was just a dream. Xiaonani, she called out softly, but there was no response. She discovered that she was already dressed. Seeing this, her eyes softened. As she sat up and her feet touched the ground, she felt weak. A hand reached out to steady her. Huan air? Xiaonani had just entered the room and saw Jiang Peihuan almost falling. Quickly, he reached out to steady her, his expression full of concern. Did you hurt yourself? Seeing the anxiety in his eyes, Jiang Peihuan shook her head. I'm fine. Where did you go? I looked around and found a way out. Chapter 277. They'll carry you. I originally intended to leave after you woke up, But since you're awake now, let's go. Okay. Perhaps due to its location underground, Jiang Pei Huan found the secret chamber to be extremely chilly. After the two put on their cloaks, they proceeded to exit. However, after just a few steps, Xiaonani squatted down in front of Jiang Pei Huan. Seeing the man's back in front of her, Jiang Pei Huan's eyes were filled with confusion. What's the matter? Get on. 111 carry you. The poison inside you hasn't been neutralized yet. I've suppressed the poison in my body with my inner energy. It won't affect me for a short while. If you're not feeling well, I should carry you. As he said this, there was a hint of upset in Xiao Nanyes's eyes. Jiang Pei Huan did feel uncomfortable. Hearing Xiao Nanyes's words, she didn't decline and slowly climbed onto his back. Leaning on Xiao Nanyes's back, Jiang Pei Huan wrapped her arms around his neck. In the past, when Jiang Pei Huan looked at Xiao Nani, she didn't feel much. But now, lying on his back, she realized how broad he was. When Xiao Nani carried Jiang Pei Huan, he noticed she was incredibly light, but her faint fragrance occasionally drifted into his breath. Neither spoke, but the atmosphere between them was harmonious. Xiao Nani kept walking with Jiang Pei Huan on his back. It felt like they had been walking for a long time, yet the road ahead still seemed endless. Unable to hold back, Jiang Pei Huan asked, Xiao Nani, are you sure we're going in the right direction? Earlier, when they had turned a corner, 3 paths had appeared. Xiao Nani chose the innermost one. Hearing Jiang Pei Huan's question, he whispered, Don't worry, we're about to get out. Who's there? Before Xiao Nani could answer, Jiang Pei Huan's whip flew out. Someone caught it, and shortly after, a figure emerged. King and Queen Cheng? Zhao Yong looked wary, but his guard dropped upon recognizing Xiao Nani and Jiang Pei Huan.
Prince.
Seeing Zhao Yong, Jiang Pei Huan sighed with relief. Marks of combat were evident on Zhao Yong. Seeing this, Jiang Pei Huan asked, Prince, did you encounter anyone in the tunnel? Yes, I met Princess Xue Jimin. By the way, did you get hurt, Queen Cheng? Jiang Pei Huan's face slightly changed at the question. Before she could answer, Xiao Nani spoke. Huan Air is just tired. One thought she should rest for a while. I see. Has the poison inside your highness been neutralized?
Not yet, but it's been suppressed.
The three continued walking. About 4 hours later, they emerged, only to be faced with a river. Looking at the river, none of them seemed pleased. Xiao Nani, put me down. Hearing Jiang Pei Huan's words, Xiao Nani carefully set her down. Jiang Pei Huan took a few steps forward. The river water was crystal clear, but its depth was unknown. She bent slightly, about to touch the water, when Xiao Nani quickly pulled her away. An arrow landed right where Jiang Pei Huan had just been standing, its fletching still quivering. Turning around, Jiang Pei Huan saw Princess Xue Ji holding a bow. It's you. I thought it was Yao Ji. It doesn't matter. Killing you will still be advantageous. While she was speaking, Xue Ji had already drawn her bow and arrow. Just as Jiang Pei Huan was preparing to take action, a scream from Xue Ji echoed. It turned out that Xiao Nani had swiftly approached Xue Ji, severing the tendons in her hand with his long sword. Xue Ji shrieked, her bow and arrow falling to the ground. In Xiao Nanyes's eyes, there was pure rage. All the soldiers around Xue Ji had fallen to the ground. Returning to Jiang Pei Huan's side, Xiao Nani coldly stared at Xue Ji. Dare to touch my wife? You're seeking death. Darkness filled Xue Ji's eyes. Even in this state, she showed no fear and shouted into the void. Aren't you coming out yet? After her shout, Jiang Pei Huan felt a group of cavalry approaching. Leading them was Lin Rahai. King Cheng, I'd advise you to stay still, or ill kill this western region queen. As Xiao Nani took a step forward, Lin Rahai's sword aimed at Yao Ji's neck. Seeing Yao Ji tied up, excitement filled Xue Ji's eyes. She felt no pain from her wrist and picked up a long sword, walking towards Yao Ji. But as she attempted to stab Yao Ji, she was stopped by Lin Rahai. What are you doing? Looking at Lin Rahai blocking her, anger filled Xue Ji's eyes. However, Lin Rahai was staring at Jiang Pei Huan. Queen Cheng, I want you to come and exchange yourself for the Western Region Queen. Otherwise, 111 kill her now. Just a Western Region Queen. If you want to kill her, go ahead. Is the Western region's queen even comparable to my queen? Before Jiang Peihuan could speak, Xiao Nani interjected. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. The most frustrated was Yao Ji, her gaze burning with anger directed at Xiao Nani. Though she had never expected Jiang Peihuan to sacrifice herself for her rescue, hearing Xiao Nani's words made her quite upset. Lin Rahai, after hearing the words, spoke up, in that case, he'll kill this, Before Lin Rahai could finish, he felt pain in his wrist. It was Xin Yin's sword, aiming directly at Lin Rahai's arm. Lin Rahai immediately countered. At this moment, Yao Ji was rescued by Rong Imo. Having sent Yao Ji to Jiang Peihuan's side, Rong Imo went to assist Xin Yin. Even though both were masters, Lin Rahai had brought many men. Thus, Rong Imo and Xin Yin couldn't capture him and could only watch him leave. Take me with you. Seeing Lin Rahai leave, Xueji quickly followed. However, Xueji was kicked away by Lin Rahai. Soon after, Xueji was caught by Xin Yin. Even when captured, arrogance filled Xueji's eyes. Looking at Yao Ji in front of her, she disdainfully said, "Don't forget what you promised mother. You can never kill me." Hearing this, a hint of sorrow flashed in Yao Ji's eyes. But when she looked at Xueji, her eyes were cold. Indeed, one promised not to kill you, but one can imprison you for a lifetime. Chapter 278. Looking for Lin Rahai to get even, you dare? Even at this moment, Xueji looked at Yao Ji with a mix of anger and disdain. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan was puzzled but didn't ask any questions because she was determined to pursue Lin Rahai. "I'll leave this to you." Xiao Nani glanced at Rong Imo, and then together with Jiang Peihuan, set off in the direction of Lin Rahai. Zhao Yong also followed closely. Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan headed north, and soon caught up with Lin Rahai. Seeing the soldiers blocking their path, Xiao Nani declared, "Anyone who dares block my way will be executed without mercy." From the moment Xiao Nani appeared, the desire to retreat sprouted in the hearts of Lin Rahai's soldiers. Seeing this, resentment filled Lin Rahai's eyes. Addressing his retreating soldiers, he coldly said, "Have you all forgotten the orders?" Hearing his words, the soldiers seemed torn, but as Xiao Nani approached, they continued to back away. Throughout the Qi kingdom, who wasn't aware of Xiao Nani's reputation? Facing him meant certain death. Soon, only Lin Rahai remained. Seeing Xiao Nani drawing his sword and charging at him, a trace of panic appeared in Lin Rahai's eyes. Still, he readied his own sword. Zhao Yong and Jiang Peihuan both refrained from intervening. This wasn't the first time Jiang Peihuan had seen Xiao Nani in combat, but it was the first time she saw him in such a state. His eyes were devoid of warmth, and his moves were ruthless. In a brief moment, Xiao Nani kicked Lin Rahai off his horse. As Lin Rahai tried to get up, Xiao Nani stepped on his chest, applying more pressure each time Lin Rahai struggled. Soon, Lin Rahai dared not move. Xiao Nani then drew his sword. Seeing this, terror filled Lin Rahai's eyes. He hurriedly exclaimed, "You can't kill me. The Emperor still has use for me. You can't. I won't kill you." Before Lin Rahai could finish, Xiao Nani calmly interrupted. Facing Lin Rahai's puzzled expression, Xiao Nani continued, "Because killing you would be too easy. So, I won't let you off so lightly." With that, Xiao Nani swiftly disabled Lin Rahai's limbs. Xiao Nani's movements were too fast. Lin Rahai only let out a scream when he felt a sharp pain in his wrists and ankles. Xiao Nani simply kicked Lin Rahai aside. Seeing Lin Rahai coughing up blood, Xiao Nani remarked with disdain, "Trash." With just that one word, Lin Rahai's eyes filled with rage, but he couldn't utter a word in retort. However, Xiao Nani didn't spare him another glance. Instead, he looked at Jiang Peihuan and gently said, "Huan Air, let's go." Jiang Peihuan's gaze swept over Lin Rahai, one of the culprits behind her family's downfall in her past life. Seeing his current state gave her a sense of catharsis. "Your Highness, Lin Rahai's actions surely hint at someone manipulating things from the shadows." Zhao Yong, who had been silent, said softly to Xiao Nani on their way back. Hearing his words, Xiao Nani nodded. I know. Not only did he know that someone was behind Lin Ruahai, but he also knew who that person was. Qi Kingdom Prince Qing's mansion, please bear with it. We need to apply medicine to this whip mark, or it will leave a scar. Lin Mingyao looked at the whip mark on Xiao Junhao's face, her eyes filled with worry and complexity. Knowing that the mark was left by Jiang Peihuan, Lin Mingyao felt very conflicted. Xiao Junhao's expression was very ugly when, at that moment, Pei Wu hurriedly ran into the living room. After bowing to Xiao Junhao, he turned to the man in the chair and said, Your Highness, our plan in the north border has failed. I should have anticipated this. If he were that easy to kill, he wouldn't be Xiao Nani. Upon hearing Pei Wu's words, a chilly glint flashed in Xiao Junhao's eyes, but his expression remained calm. After a moment of silence, Pei Wu asked, Your Highness, should we continue to set up ambushes on the road? No need. They're already on guard. Even if we deploy men in advance, it would just be a waste. Moreover, I'm not the only one in a hurry. Sighed Consort, you can't go in, you. Get out of my way. How dare you block me, you dog servant. Suddenly, a harsh rebuke sounded. Xiao Junhao frowned and, looking at Pei Wu, said coldly, What's going on? It sighed Consort Xue. Before Pei Wu could finish, Xue Ru had already entered the room. Seeing Lin Mingyao sitting next to Xiao Junhao, jealousy filled Xue Ru's eyes. Your Highness, Your Highness, what happened to your face? Xue Ru instinctively cooed at Xiao Junhao, but when she turned her head and saw the whip mark on his face, she was utterly shocked. However, when Xiao Junhao looked at Xue Ru, his eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth. He had initially approached Xue Ru because she was the only daughter of the Xue family, and the Xue family was related by marriage to the Jiang family. Otherwise, Xiao Junhao would not have considered a woman of her status. However, after getting involved with Xue Ru, Xiao Junhao realized that she held no status in the Xue family. The family even expelled her from their household. So, seeing Xue Ru now, Xiao Junhao felt not only cold but also a bit irritated. Hearing her voice, Xiao Junhao coldly said, Why are you here? Return to your courtyard. Without my orders, you're not to step out. Before Xue Ru could reply, Xiao Junhao issued his command. Upon hearing this, Xue Ru froze. After a few seconds, she stepped forward, trying to hold onto Xiao Junhao's arm, forcing a smile. Your Highness, didn't you say you liked me, wanted to have children with me, and would treat me well? Her voice choked as Xiao Junhao grasped her throat. As Xue Ru entered, Lin Mingyao had moved aside. Now, seeing this scene, not only did Lin Mingyao show no intention of intervening, but there was also a hint of mockery and amusement in her eyes. The story of Xue Ru wearing her bridal gown, riding in her bridal sedan chair, had already spread throughout the capital. Although she was still nominally a side consort of the prince's Qing mansion, everyone laughed at her behind her back. And all this was caused by Xue Ru herself. Thinking of these events, Lin Mingyio's eyes filled with murderous intent. Your Highness. Chapter 279. Cherish the person in front of you. Pei Wu did not have any feelings for a woman like Xue Ru. But considering she was the daughter of the Xue family and Xue Ru had made an appearance before Emperor Qiming, Pei Wu still whispered to call Xiao Junhao. At that moment, Xue Ru's face turned pale. The feeling of suffocation came over her. Just when Xue Ru thought she was going to die, the hand on her neck suddenly let go. Cough, cough, cough. Xue Ru fell straight to the ground, clutching her chest, coughing non-stop, to the point where tears came out. Xiao Junhao, however, stood up and walked over to her. Seeing Xiao Junhao approach her, Xue Ru's eyes were filled with fear and a bit of confusion. Just a short while ago, this man looked at her with such tenderness, even buying her beautiful clothes and jewelry. Why? Looking up at Xiao Junhao, Xue Ru asked with a hoarse voice. Why? Heh. Hearing Xue Ru's words, Xiao Junhao laughed as if he'd heard a pleasant joke. But although his face wore a smile, because of the whip mark on his face, he looked rather menacing. Mockery filled Xiao Junhao's eyes. Looking at Shui Ru, he said lightly, "If I knew you had no status in the Shui family, I wouldn't even bother giving you a second glance. Take her away."
Yes.
Quickly, Shui Ru was taken away by Pei Wu. This time, Shui Ru didn't dare resist, because when Xiao Juanhao had choked her earlier, she genuinely felt he intended to kill her. As for the events in the capital, Zhang Peihuan was unaware. Just after returning to the Western Region Palace, Xiao Nanya's poison began to act up. Yi Xiao, prepare the medicinal bath.
Yes.
Soon, a bathtub was brought into the room, and Zhang Peihuan helped Xiao Nani into the bath. As Xiao Nani sat down, the boiling water instantly turned to ice. Xiao Nani continued to shiver. Seeing this, Zhang Peihuan looked very worried. These herbs no longer had any effect on the poison in Xiao Nanya's body. Helping Xiao Nani out of the bathtub, Zhang Peihuan wrapped him in a blanket. But the man reached out and held her. Huan air. The man shivered continuously, even his voice quivered. Feeling the man's tremors, Zhang Peihuan instinctively held him, feeling an intense coldness. An hour later, Xiao Nani slowly recovered. Zhang Peihuan instinctively checked his pulse. Meeting his gaze, she said coldly, "The poison has seeped into your meridians." Worry filled her eyes. Seeing her concern, the man chuckled. "It's all right. We'll find a way to cure it eventually. I actually think this poison is quite good. In the future, when empoisoned, you can just hold me like you did just now." While saying this, Xiao Nani held Zhang Peihuan even tighter. However, she pushed him away. Facing Xiao Nanya's innocent eyes, Zhang Peihuan said annoyedly, "Do you realize that the poison has seeped into your meridians? Soon, it will turn into a cold poison. Once that happens, you could die from its effects at any moment." "It won't happen. Huan Air, I promise you. One will live well and will never die." In the past, he didn't care much about life and death. However, after meeting Zhang Peihuan, Xiao Nani suddenly didn't want to die like that. He wanted to live well and be with Zhang Peihuan. "Let's return to the capital. I want to go back and read medical books to see how to cure the poison from your body." Thinking of the medical techniques that the person left behind, hope emerged in Zhang Peihuan's heart. As for Zhang Peihuan's decision, Xiao Nani followed it unconditionally. However, when Yao Ji heard that Zhang Peihuan and the others were about to leave, her eyes were full of reluctance. Looking at Zhang Peihuan, she couldn't help but speak. "Queen Sheng, are you leaving so soon?" Hearing Yao Ji's words, Jin Peihuan nodded. Just as Zhang Peihuan was about to speak, she saw Yao Ji looking at Rong Emo and asked, "When will you give me the child you promised?" No one expected Yao Ji to remember this. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at Rong Emo, including Xiao Nani, whose eyes showed a touch of curiosity. Facing everyone's gaze, Rong Emo was very calm. Looking at Yao Ji, he said softly, "Yao Ji, there's a saying in our central plains which I want to give to you now." "What is it?" "Cherish the person in front of you." As he spoke, Rong Emo looked directly at Xin Yan beside Yao Ji. Following his gaze, Yao Ji also looked at Xin Yan. Rong Emo continued, "Xin Yan truly loves you, Yao Ji. I hope you can be with him." Hearing Rong Mo's words, Yao Ji's eyes were filled with confusion and a bit of struggle, but she did not bring up the child again. That night, Zhang Peihuan and the others set off. While sitting in the carriage, Zhang Peihuan learned about Shui Ji's fate. Yao Ji did not kill her, but imprisoned her in her palace. Thinking of Shui Ji's attitude towards Yao Ji, Zhang Peihuan couldn't help but turn to Rong Emo and ask, "Are all the palaces in the western region so lenient?" Before Rong Emo could answer, Xiao Nani whispered, "It's not the leniency of the Western Region Palace, but because of Shui Ji's special status." Seeing Zhang Peihuan turning her head to look at him, Xiao Nani continued, "Shui Ji is the child of the previous queen of the Western Region, while Yao Ji is just a noble girl. She was adopted by the former queen after her parents died." Why did Yao Ji inherit the queen's position? Understanding this, Zhang Peihuan somewhat understood Shui Ji's resentment towards Yao Ji. After all, the throne originally belonged to her. As for what happened next, he knows better. Xiao Nani glanced at Rong Emo and said lightly. Hearing Xiao Nanya's words, Zhang Peihuan turned to Rong Emo. Meeting the curious gazes of the two, Rongimo softly said, "The former queen of the western region had only one child, Xueji, so she was extremely doted on, which led to Xueji's arrogant and cold nature. The former queen was a wise woman. She understood that if she handed the throne to Xueji, it would be harmful to the citizen. So, she gave the throne to Yao Ji but made her promise not to kill Xueji no matter what she did." Rongimo briefly explained the story of the Western Region dynasty. After understanding the reasons, Jiang Peihuan had complex feelings in her eyes. She did not approve of the former queen's actions. As a mother, she should have taught her child properly from the beginning, rather than letting someone else be responsible for it later. "Do you know who poisoned you?" Chapter 280. The great Empress Dowager was poisoned. Jiang Peihuan didn't want to continue the topic of Yao Ji and Xueji, so she turned directly to Xiao Nani and asked. Xiao Nani, who just had gentle eyes, turned gloomy after hearing Jiang Peihuan's words. Who else could it be besides her? Seeing the darkness in Xiao Nani's eyes, Jiang Peihuan continued, "What are you going to do next? If you hadn't died this time, she would have planned another assassination soon. Don't worry, she won't dare for a short time." As he said this, there was a menacing look in Xiao Nani's eyes. Jiang Peihuan raised an eyebrow. "What did you do? Why can she target me, but I can't target her?" In the imperial city, Sinang Palace. "Great Empress, someone, call the imperial doctor." The nanny walked into the great Empress Dowager's bedroom, only to be met with a strong smell of blood. The great Empress Dowager was lying on the bed, pale, with blood at the corner of her mouth. Soon, the imperial doctor was summoned to Sinang Palace. Emperor Qiming and the Empress were also alarmed. How could the great Empress Dowager be poisoned? "What are you people doing?" Hearing the imperial doctor's words, anger flashed in Emperor Qiming's eyes. All the eunuchs and maids of Sinang Palace knelt on the ground, not daring to speak. "Guards, take them all and beat them to death." Hearing Emperor Qiming's words, fear appeared in the eyes of the maids and eunuchs. At this moment, the voice of the great Empress Dowager reached Emperor Qiming. "Qiming, mother, how do you feel?" Hearing the great Empress Dowager's voice, Emperor Qiming could not care less about the eunuchs and maidservants on the ground. He directly walked to the great Empress Dowager's side, and the Empress hurriedly followed. The great Empress Dowager's stomach was still throbbing in pain, but when she heard Emperor Qiming's words, she still said softly, "I am fine. We must keep my poisoning a secret. Please pardon them for now. Since Mother pleads mercy for them, I will spare them. But if it happens again, even your intercession won't save them." Seeing that the great Empress Dowager was not in good spirits, Emperor Qiming spoke with her briefly before leaving with the Empress. After Emperor Qiming left, the gentleness in the great Empress Dowager's eyes vanished, replaced by a chilling darkness. "Great Empress?" The old nanny approached, whispering. Seeing her, the great Empress Dowager asked softly, "Any news?" The old nanny shook her head. "No clues found. Maybe, Great Empress, something has happened." Before the old nanny could finish, a palace servant girl rushed in. Seeing her panic, the great Empress Dowager's eyes filled with fury. "What are you shouting about?" "Great Empress, Snowball is dead." "What did you say?" Snowball was a pet dog raised by the great Empress Dowager, greatly cherished, with dedicated eunuchs taking care of it. Moments later, the young eunuch who cared for Snowball entered, holding its cage. Seeing the dog in the cage, the great Empress Dowager was in turmoil. The dog was gutted, its white fur stained red with blood. Seeing this, the great Empress Dowager staggered. "Take it away." Seeing this, the old nanny quickly stepped forward to support the great Empress Dowager and ordered the eunuch. "Great Empress? We don't need to investigate further. It must be him. That bastard didn't die. He's still alive." By the end of her words, the great Empress Dowager spat out blood and fainted. The palace maid at the side wanted to call the imperial doctor, but was scolded by the old nanny. "Don't go." When traveling from Kyoto to the western regions, The journey was filled with twists and turns, but on the return trip, everything went smoothly. As they approached the city gate, Zhao Yong and Rong Imo parted ways with Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan. Looking at Zhao Yong seated on his horse, Jiang Peihuan softly said, "Prince, thank you for everything this time." Jiang Peihuan wasn't fond of the people of the Huainan King's mansion, but she never grew tired of Zhao Yong. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Zhao Yong whispered, "I'm repaying a favor to the queen. From now on, we owe each other nothing." After saying this, Zhao Yong walked away. "Master, you're finally back." Han Feng had also arrived at the city gate. Seeing Xiao Nani getting off the carriage, his eyes were filled with excitement. Queen Cheng, when he saw Jin Peihuan, Han Feng quickly went forward and bowed. "Get up." Jiang Peihuan had grown accustomed to their form of address. Seeing Han Feng bowing to her, she spoke softly. "If there's any news, let's discuss it back at the mansion." Upon Xiao Nanye's command, everyone headed straight to the Cheng mansion. Qin Cheng, Yu Er and Lu Er both stood at the main entrance of the King Cheng mansion. Seeing Jiang Peihuan alighting from the carriage, they immediately surrounded her. "I'm back." Seeing them, a faint smile appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. "Has anything happened at the mansion during my absence?" After sitting down on the chair in the living room, Xiao Nani looked at Han Feng and said, "Master, during the time when you and the queen were absent, many people came to the mansion inquiring about news, but Ada and Ayun sent them away." Ada and Ayun are the individuals disguised as Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan. "Master, the great Empress Dowager is sick. Is that so?" Listening to Han Feng talking about the events that transpired in the capital, Xiao Nanye's expression remained unchanged. However, upon hearing this, a hint of a smile appeared on Xiao Nanye's face. Yet, there wasn't a trace of mirth in his eyes, only mockery. "The great Empress Dowager is sick. As her junior, it's only right for me to visit." "Prepare. I'm going to enter the palace."
Yes.
"Xiao Nani, I'll go with you." Hearing Jin Peihuan's words, Xiao Nani frowned. Seeing the look in his eyes, Jiang Peihuan said softly, "Logically speaking, after our wedding, I should have visited the great Empress Dowager and the Empress. Then, let's go to the palace together." First, they went to the Qinqing Palace to see Emperor Qiming. The two of them first went to the Clear Sky Hall to see Emperor Qiming. Emperor Qiming didn't seem to notice Xiao Nanye's half-month absence from the capital. Looking at Xiao Nani, who was paying his respects, he said in a low voice, "I thought after your marriage, you wouldn't plan on visiting the palace anymore." Facing Emperor Qiming's provocative remark, Xiao Nani remained silent, as if he hadn't heard anything. Seeing his silence, Emperor Qiming turned his attention to Jiang Peihuan. "What are you doing in the palace with this guy?" Perhaps because of her marriage to Xiao Nani, Jiang Peihuan noticed that Emperor Qiming's attitude towards her had become a bit warmer. Hearing Emperor Qiming's question, Jiang Peihuan responded softly, "Your Majesty, Nani and I came to the palace to pay our respects to the great Empress Dowager. We heard that the great Empress Dowager is unwell, and the Nani was worried, so we decided to visit her." Chapter 281. Visiting the Great Empress Dowager. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Emperor Qiming was stunned. Not only was Emperor Qiming stunned, Xiao Nani himself couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Do you really think that way?" After a moment, Emperor Qiming looked at Xiao Nani and asked softly. However, when he spoke, doubt filled Emperor Qiming's eyes. He was unaware of the Great Empress Dowager's attempts to assassinate Xiao Nani, but he was very clear about the Great Empress Dowager's attitude towards Xiao Nani. So, after hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Emperor Qiming's expression was very strange. After hearing Emperor Qiming's words, Xiao Nanye's attitude was very calm. He nodded and said softly, "1 a.m. indeed worried about the Great Empress Dowager. When I heard she was ill, I wanted to visit her. If you're worried, then go see her." With that, Emperor Qiming turned to Wang Kuan and said, "Take them both to the Xinang Palace."
Yes.
After leaving the Qinqing Palace, Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan followed Wang Kuan towards the Xinang Palace. Before Xiaonani and Jiang Peihuan arrived at the Xinang Palace, the news had already reached the ears of the great Empress Dowager. Hearing the words of those around her, the Empress Dowager's eyes were filled with gloom. "He dares to see me, this bastard. Your Royal Majesty, not only has King Cheng arrived, but the Queen is also here. So, today you might have to let them in." In the past, the great Empress Dowager would not meet Xiaonani, so he would only stand at the entrance of the Xinang Palace for a while and then leave. But today, not only Xiaonani came, but also Jiang Peihuan. If the great Empress Dowager still refuses to see them, it won't sound good when the news gets out. Hearing the old nanny's words, the already upset face of the great Empress Dowager became even more so. After a few seconds of silence, she said coldly, "Let them in then. One's supposed to be afraid of that bastard? Your Royal Majesty, King Cheng and Queen Cheng are here to pay their respects." Just as the great Empress Dowager finished speaking, she heard the voice of a young eunuch in the palace. Seeing that the great Empress Dowager remained silent, the old nanny turned to the young eunuch and said, "Hurry up and invite the King and Queen Cheng in." After entering the inner hall, Jin Peihuan was slightly behind Xiaonani. The two of them walked inside together. Upon entering the inner hall of the Xinang Palace, Jiang Peihuan saw the great Empress Dowager sitting in the main seat. The great Empress Dowager's face was very pale. Although she had some makeup on, it still couldn't hide the tiredness in her eyes. With just one look, Jiang Peihuan knew that the great Empress Dowager was truly ill and it wasn't a minor sickness. When the Empress Dowager looked over, Jiang Peihuan slightly bowed. "We pays respects to the great Empress Dowager. Get up." The great Empress Dowager cast a glance at the two standing below, her eyes filled with complexity. After Jiang Peihuan stood up, the great Empress Dowager coldly asked, "Why have you come to my Xinang Palace today?" Jiang Peihuan replied, preempting, "After the grand wedding, we should have come to the palace for a visit. However, due to my husband's minor illness, we were delayed for a few days. We beg for the great Empress Dowager's forgiveness." Hearing this, the great Empress Dowager's eyes wandered over Xiaonani, laden with meaning. "Feeling unwell?" she inquired. Seeing Xiaonani appearing perfectly normal, with no signs of illness, the great Empress Dowager's expression darkened. After a long pause, she finally said, "If you're feeling unwell, then rest well at your mansion." Ignoring her implied command to leave, Xiaonani said with a smile, "I've heard the great Empress Dowager is unwell, so I came to visit. How are you feeling now?" His face bore a smile, but his eyes held no warmth. Hearing this, the great Empress Dowager's gaze towards Xiaonani was unmistakably murderous. After a moment, she turned to the old gnat beside her. "I suppose Queen Cheng hasn't visited the Empress yet. Take her there. As for King Cheng, let him stay here. I want to have a few words with him." Jiang Peihuan appeared conflicted, wanting to say something, but Xiaonani gave her a look. She respectfully bowed to the great Empress Dowager and left with the old nanny. Seeing the expression in the man's eyes, Jin Peihuan bowed to the great Empress Dowager and followed the old nanny. After Jiang Peihuan was taken away, the gentle look that remained in great Empress Dowager's eyes disappeared without a trace, replaced by a shadow of gloom. "Did you order someone to kill my snowball?" The great Empress Dowager's eyes turned cold. Xiaonani nodded. "Indeed, Empress Dowager, you truly are foresight." Even though his tone was indifferent, the Empress Dowager detected the sarcasm. She shouted, "You are just as despicable as your shameless mother." Hearing this, Xiaonani's eyes were filled with fury. He retorted, "Speaking of being despicable, who can compare to you, great Empress Dowager?" Flustered, she shot back, "What did you say?" For some reason, seeing this side of Xiaonani filled the great Empress Dowager with a sense of foreboding. As she looked at him with disbelief, Xiaonani smirked, "Great Empress Dowager, if my imperial brother knew he had another brother from a different father, how do you think he would feel?" "Shut your mouth." Before Xiaonani could finish his words, the great Empress Dowager coldly interrupted him. The warmth in her face disappeared instantly, and she nearly collapsed to the ground. She stared at Xiaonani in disbelief, asking, "How could you possibly? Are you asking how I came to know?" Xiaonani caught on to her unfinished question, and without waiting for her response, continued, "There are no secrets that remain hidden in this world." Hearing Xiaonani's words, the Empress Dowager fell silent. After a long while, she looked at Xiaonani with mocking eyes. "So, you came here today to threaten me with this?" "It's not a threat. It's a reminder. Great Empress Dowager, one know your fears. I can tell you directly. If one were truly interested in that position, you wouldn't be the Great Empress Dowager. So, don't anger me anymore. Whether that person lives or dies, I can't guarantee." After saying these words, Xiaonani didn't look at the Great Empress Dowager anymore. Without waiting for her response, he left the Xinang Palace. The Great Empress Dowager watched Xiaonani's retreating figure, her eyes full of complex emotions, mixed with a touch of panic. Only when Xiaonani's figure disappeared from her sight did the Great Empress Dowager, trembling, manage to stand. But as soon as she got up, she collapsed back down. Chapter 282. Taking the Empress Pulse, Zhang Peihuan was unaware of what had transpired in the Xinang Palace. At that moment, Zhang Peihuan was in the Empress Kuanning Palace. "Now that you have married into the King Cheng's mansion, you are family. When you are free, you can come to the Kuanning Palace and chat with me," the Empress said with a smile, looking at Zhang Peihuan seated below her.
I spend my days in the palace without much company.
Upon hearing the Empress, Zhang Peihuan quickly stood up to show respect.
"Yes, if your royal majesty does not find my speech dull, I will often come to the palace to accompany you."
"If you were dull-witted, then there would be no smart people in this world." Most of the time when speaking with the Empress, it was the Empress doing the talking and Zhang Peihuan listening. She only replied when the Empress asked her something. As Zhang Peihuan listened, her gaze involuntarily drifted to the palace entrance. Even though she knew that the Great Empress Dowager wouldn't harm Xiaonani inside the palace, she still worried about any underhanded tactics. After all, there were numerous ways to harm someone in the palace. "Imperial sister-in-law, am here to pick up Huan heir." Just as Zhang Peihuan was lost in thought, a deep male voice reached her ears. Soon, she saw Xiaonani approaching. Finally, "You're here." With you gone, her attention wasn't here either. "All right, now that you're here, take her home. Live your lives well. I'll remember your words, Imperial sister-in-law. But today is Huan heir's first visit. Does Imperial sister have any gifts prepared? I've heard of the treasures you possess." "You cheeky boy, isn't robbing the Emperor's private treasury enough? Now you covet the items in my possession. Even if you hadn't mentioned it, I'd have given her something. Bring the gifts prepared for Queen Shang."
"Yes."
The main maid beside the Empress hurriedly went to the inner chamber. Moments later, several palace maids came out with trays. There were not only jewels, but also some rare fabrics. "These are the gifts I've prepared for you. One wasn't sure what you'd like, so I got a variety." "Thank you for your generous gifts, Your Royal Majesty." Hearing the Empress' words, Zhang Peihuan quickly bowed in gratitude. The Empress smiled, helping Zhang Peihuan up. After she stood, the Empress turned to Xiaonani, saying with mock annoyance, "Satisfied now?" "Yes, thank you, Imperial sister-in-law." "All right, take your wife and go. I also have a gift for Imperial sister-in-law." "Oh, it's rare to get something from you." Xiaonani remained silent, pulling out a palm-sized box from his sleeve. Handing it over, he whispered, "This is a trinket I chanced upon outside the palace. I thought Imperial sister-in-law might like it." Upon hearing Xiaonani's words, the Empress immediately opened the wooden box. When the box was opened, Zhang Peihuan saw what was inside. It was a red pomegranate, but the entire pomegranate was inlaid with red gemstones, making it appear like a real fruit. However, when the Empress saw this jeweled pomegranate, the expression in her eyes became very complex. After a long moment, she looked at Xiaonani and softly chuckled. "You are thoughtful. Imperial sister-in-law, take good care of yourself. Your wishes will soon be fulfilled." Though Xiao Nanya's demeanor was very casual, Zhang Peihuan could detect the reassurance in his tone. Looking at the Empress, Zhang Peihuan seemed deep in thought. In her previous life, she had not interacted much with the Empress, only knowing that the Empress had a single daughter. Until Zhang Peihuan's death in that life, she had never heard of the Empress being pregnant again. In her past life, the competitiveness among the princes was largely because the Empress had no son. If the Empress could birth a legitimate son, everything would change. After contemplating, Zhang Peihuan suddenly said, "Your Royal Majesty, I've read some medical books during my free time. May first take your pulse?" Upon hearing this, the Empress was momentarily stunned. But she didn't refuse and instead smiled, saying, "Of course you can." After the Empress sat down on a chair, Zhang Peihuan began to take her pulse. At first, Zhang Peihuan thought the reason the Empress hadn't pregnant for so many years was due to some health issues, maybe cold uterus or other complications. But as she held the Empress' wrist, Zhang Peihuan's brow furrowed. The Empress had only agreed to this pulse, reading out of consideration for Xiao Nani. But seeing Zhang Peihuan's concern, the Empress became more serious. "Queen Sheng, is there something wrong with my health? Your Royal Majesty, do you know why you haven't been pregnant for so many years?" "I don't. The imperial doctor have checked me, and they found no problems with my health. Perhaps it's just my fate to have fewer children." "No, it's not because of fate. You've been poisoned." "What did you say?" Upon hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, the Empress' smile vanished instantly. Glancing at her personal maid and waiting for her to leave, the Empress then said, "Queen Sheng, one should not make such accusations lightly. If I truly were poisoned, why haven't the imperial doctor detected it? Your Royal Majesty, do you feel fatigued and dizzy during the fall but recover by evening? And when winter comes, you become unusually cold and intolerant. How did you know?" Hearing Zhang Peihuan's words, the Empress' complexion changed instantly. After a pause, the Empress' eyes widened. "Could it be? I've truly been poisoned?" "Your Royal Majesty, the poison has been in your body for 7 years." "7 years? Princess 17 is 8 years old, and I've been poisoned for 7 years. All these years, one thought it was destiny not granting me another child. But it was actually the work of traitors?" The Empress' eyes burned with anger and a cold fury. After a long time, she turned to Zhang Peihuan, asking softly, "Huan Heir, do you know the nature of the poison?" "The poison in your body is called penilea. It's a chronic poison, primarily making women infertile. Can the poison inside me be cured?" When she said this, the Empress' eyes were filled with urgency. Meeting the Empress' anxious gaze, Zhang Peihuan nodded seriously. "Rest assured, Your Royal Majesty, this poison can be cured." Chapter 283. The real culprit behind the scenes. "That's great." This was said by the personal maid by the side of the Empress. Seeing Zhang Peihuan look at her, she quickly spoke up, "Queen Sheng, please save the Empress. Are you the personal maid of the Empress?" "Ase has been my personal maid for many years." This was said by the Empress. The Empress saying this indicates that Ase is trustworthy. However, when Zhang Peihuan looked at Ase, her expression was very complicated. "The sachet on the girl smells very good. I wonder what kind of fragrance is inside." Hearing this, all Ses' face changed instantly. In an instant, she pushed towards a nearby pillar. Ase reacted quickly, but she was no match for Xiao Nani. The man rushed forward, directly kicking Ase to the ground. She spat out blood immediately. Lying on the ground, Ase wanted to say something, but as soon as she opened her mouth, blood couldn't stop pouring out. The Empress, seeing this scene, was stunned. It took her several seconds to recover, and then she looked at Zhang Peihuan and whispered, "Huan Heir, could the poison in me be related to Ase?" The Empress, having risen to this position, was never a fool. Looking at the scene before her, what else did she not understand? Hearing the Empress' words, Zhang Peihuan moved her gaze from Ase and looked back at the Empress, saying, The reason why your royal majesty feels headaches in autumn is because the scent from her sachet contradicts with Penilia, causing you to have headaches in autumn and fear the cold in winter. I've treated you well since you came to me at the age of 5. One treated you like my own younger sister. When your parents were seriously ill, one gave you money to see the doctor. How did one wrong you that you would betray me like the others? The Empress looked at Ase on the ground and spoke softly. The Empress' tone was very calm, but her eyes were slightly bloodshot. Hearing the Empress' words, guilt filled Ase's eyes, but she remained silent. Seeing this, the Empress was filled with anger. Now, are you still going to protect your master? Why should the Empress be upset over such a treacherous thing? In my opinion, throw her to the torture department. No matter how tough she is, can she endure those tortures? Hearing Xiao Nanya's words, Alse trembled but remained silent. Seeing this, the mockery in Xiao Nanya's eyes deepened, choosing punishment over admitting. After speaking, Xiao Nani directly drew his sword. As he approached Ase, there was a flash of light from the sword, and then Alse screamed, because Xiao Nani had cut off one of her fingers. Seeing this, both the Empress and Jiang Peihuan showed no change in expression. Xiao Nanya's patience had worn thin. He looked at Alse and said directly, "You still want speak?" As he finished speaking, another of all Ses fingers was severed. By the time Xiao Nani raised his sword for the third time, Alse spoke in a hoarse voice, "One, ill speak." Hearing this, Xiao Nani put away his sword and stood next to Jiang Peihuan. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan showed no signs of disgust or disdain, he looked relieved. "Your Royal Majesty, the poison inside you was given by the madam. What nonsense are you talking about?" Hearing Alse words, fury filled the Empress' eyes. Without waiting for Ase to speak, the Empress interjected, "My mother has always been kind to me. How could she poison me?" As if remembering something, pain appeared in the Empress' eyes. Ase continued, "Madam is naturally kind to you. But have you forgotten? The third young lady is the madam's biological daughter. Although madam is your aunt, between you and the third young lady, she naturally loves her own daughter more. If not for the third young lady being too young back then, she would have entered the palace instead of you. But as the third young lady grew older, the idea of replacing you never disappeared from the madam's heart." Replace? How does she intend to replace? Penilia is a chronic poison. However, any poison is harmful to the body. In at most 3 more years, you will be beyond medical help. Before Ase could speak, Jiang Peihuan, standing next to Xiao Nani, softly interrupted. And the Empress, hearing this, was utterly bewildered. Once, she had someone she deeply loved, but for the glory of her family, she decisively entered the palace. Although she was the Empress, she had been schemed against many times in the past few years. However, when she thought of the people behind her, she gritted her teeth and held on. It was just that she had never thought that the person who wanted to harm her the most was actually the person she wanted to protect. How could she believe this? Alse, seeing that we have been master and servant for many years, I will only ask you one thing. Does father know about this? At this moment, although the eyes of the Empress were still full of pain, her face had regained its usual composure. Hearing the Empress' words, Alse trembled but ultimately remained silent, only bowing her head. However, when the Empress saw all Ses lowered her head, the emotions she had just collected welled up again, bringing tears to her eyes. Silence means consent. So, her father actually knew about it? Heh, haha, Your Royal Majesty? The Empress laughed, and as she did, she suddenly collapsed to the side. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan hurriedly stepped forward to support the Empress. After settling her on a soft couch, Jiang Peihuan quickly took out her silver needles. Inserting the needles into the Empress' head, Jiang Peihuan carefully observed her complexion. After a while, the Empress' head was full of silver needles, but she opened her eyes. As she was about to move, Jiang Peihuan held her hand. "Please don't move. Let me continue with the acupuncture." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the Empress didn't respond but lay quietly. "Wan Air, may first come in?" Since it was the Empress chamber, Xiaonani stood guard outside. Hearing the sound inside, he asked softly, "Come in." Hearing Jiang Paihuan's voice, Xiaonani walked in confidently. Seeing the exhausted Empress, Xiaonani looked at Jiang Peihuan and asked, "How is the imperial sister-in-law?" "She has a heart condition due to overexertion. I'm administering acupuncture to her. You should send someone to fetch a bottle of heart-nourishing pills from the mansion." "All right." After hearing Jiang Paihuan's words, Xiaonani immediately turned and left. After Xiaonani's departure, Jiang Peihuan lowered her head to look at the Empress and whispered, "Your Royal Majesty, you must take care of your health. Think about the 17th princess. She's only 8. Without you protecting her, how hard will her life be in this palace?" You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.